Well, hello and welcome. We're here for this week's EMEA, Week 7, Season 2 of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. Nathan, it kicked off in APAC last night on the Libby Hill after party. It was quite a party after all, wasn't it? What a good course.
Yeah, it's a really great course. We do have a lot of sprinting up for grabs for lots of points. It is a points race out there today, everybody. First across the line does matter for a lot of points, but with 5 sprints up on the top of the flatter sections of Richmond with a lot of cobbles. Interesting enough, Kate, we saw a lot of breakaways. I was not expecting that at all. Like a lot of shattered fields in the APAC. We'll see if something similar happens in the EMEA here. Maybe the larger groups, larger packs. I mean, this is the highest level of participation in the EMEA, so maybe not. We'll see how that ends up playing out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different tactics we saw, and certainly what we saw on screen told a very different story to what we saw in the points, and that was very much thanks to the fastest through segment. So we can unpack that a bit while the racing's going on, but we do want to jump down there as quick as we can. So let's take a quick look at the course because it is quite a special one. It's only 33K, only 106 meters of vertical climbing. On paper, Nathan, it looks like an open and shut affair for the sprinters.
Yeah, as you do see, you'll see that little sprint point pop up 5 times at the top. It is only going to be monument. We did see beast mode going for the Broad Street actually sprint, and we got a little bit of a tweet about that. They wanted that extra sprint to be happening for some points, but that is not. There will only be the sprint points up on Monument Avenue actually, and then they'll head on down to the industrial park and over toward Libby Hill after 5 times 33.18 kilometers. The only real climbing that's of significance is that Libby Hill. There is a little bit of a jot that we will see perhaps in a moment here down with the riders that are just getting out on course for the EMEA East 1. They are about to hit the first cobble section here, Kate, and that first little cobble section, they hit that every time around, and there's a little 3% gradient there. After the sprint, if there are some attacks, enough of them, you could try and get away. And with all the sprint points up for grabs, without a team maybe trying to control, you could roll some dice.
Yeah, it's certainly a moment of danger and a point of real concern for anybody who is fully going for that sprint, but trying to recover. In fact, we saw a couple of the sprinters that we may have favoured last night started to struggle in the back end after going for all of those intermediate sprint points. And it does shake out fairly quickly in the first 1 or 2 sprints what the teams may be going for. So we should be able to figure that out. But as the Beast Mode crew indicated last night, after their little polywaffle of an effort on that sprint, they were just doing a recon for their women anyway. So I think on a couple of fronts, there'll be a few people who tuned into the APAC feed to take a look, but also a couple of teams who may have then written some secret squirrel notes for the others heading out on course. We do need to take a look at the standings, but we'll also head down to pictures as soon as we can. I mean, now's the time to grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea if you're going to do that, so that we don't miss out on any racing going on. But look, gee, the pace is on already. 2.7 kilometres in only, and they're up around that 50k an hour mark. Gee, I hope everyone warmed up, Nathan. Bit of a rude start if they didn't.
Yeah, right off the bat. I mean, and that was one of the things here is that immediately the kind of speeds that do pick up, and the reality of a pack here of about 98 racers, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the nearby list. We're currently looking at Ed Laverick actually giving a little bit of a go and not being a sprinter here. This is a setup for WLC. I'm liking this a little bit because this is going to cause some of the other teams to have to make a chase. If they don't do so, he might be able to have some sort of an upset. At 5.4 on the front, 6 watts per kilogram here. Cryogen, you're seeing now trying to take over, and this might wear out some legs. And Kate, I'm loving this because the other WLC riders can sit in and wait for the actual sprint and force the other teams to chase. Because Laverick, he's not a sprinter, and this is completely just a setup to make sure that WLC have a chance.
It's strategic brilliance, really. I mean, you said the other teams would need to pay attention when this happens. I just immediately thought, oh gosh, this is anxiety inducing when somebody goes off the front and your immediate reaction is, oh, they're not a sprinter, no big deal. And then it's in that microsecond that it kind of tweaks about what they may actually be doing and setting it up. They've got to stay pretty aware the whole time. It's only 33K, including the lead in, but that includes a whole lot of having to pay attention. Look at this. The power-ups are being dropped. They hit that sprint line, not only first over the line, but first through segment, and Toggles out of the seat in the orange. He's on the move here. This is not going to work out for him. That was a fast finish.
Van Ruth,
Goodness.
Kalman, Tugels, I think, looked maybe fourth if Alexi Kalman was able to come through. And Kalman, I have not seen Alexi Kalman with a sprint like that in quite a while. Solid kick there coming from the Danish national champion of Zwift right now. And now these are some of the dangerous moments. We saw James Bevan in the final lap break off the back, actually broken in that final lap, unable to hang on. We thought he was going to be a definite shoe-in for the sprint up over the top of Libby Hill. But as you can see, look at how strung out this is. They started that sprint at the 180-degree turn. With how long that sprint is lasting, it is absolutely a danger point. I was not expecting this kind of a breakup so early and the kind of effort just to hang on now. And if they continue over the top of this with these attacks, this can maybe be a very different kind of race than we were talking about up front. It's not just a stroll around the upper parts of Richmond and Libby Hill. This is an all-out battle, it looks like, from lap number 1.
Yeah, this has started with a bang, hasn't it? I definitely think if you had have watched last night's race at all, you could see the potential to really string it out and make sure it is a smaller field, or at the very least that they would go to the finish a little bit fatigued and worn out, because Libby Hill really bites after doing all these sprints. It just takes the real punch out of the legs. The team standings, look, there's a fairly solid lead by BZR Sports Solid Esports Team Red there. They're not in danger of losing this series with an 11-point gap there ahead of Fusion ECT, World Elite Zwifters. Also sitting there, I mean, the next 4 are fairly tight. But that doesn't mean that they won't be all racing pretty hard today, not only for that second spot on the table there, but also for a little bit of ego and pride. I think we saw that a bit last night, that it was definitely not all about those overall points, but the riders certainly just wanted to perform in the race on their own right. And we also saw, I thought it was really interesting, Nathan, and this is something that we can pay attention from really early on today, is that the names that we saw in the intermediate sprints, they were different each lap, and then they were completely different to the names that we saw up Libby Hill. So you do need to think about your strategy. Are you going to try and earn points by being fastest through segment and getting those intermediates, or do you save it and kind of take that gamble on the final sprint? The teams need to be fairly solid and organised on what tactic they're chasing, because it's not the kind of race where you can think on the go and get out there, see how you feel, and then make a decision. It's just too hard and fast from the beginning.
Yeah, I have to agree 100% that the tactic has to be you are committed to the sprints and you are committed to, and what sprints even that you're organizing for, plus, you know, who's going to be taking on Libby Hill. Now, a rider like Tugels, I was a little bit surprised to see him involved in an initial sprint, because he's a breakaway / final kick to the line type rider. And Tugels, this is the kind of rider too that you don't see this kind of rider often. You know, we did see a lot of times in almost every single one of the sprints in APAC as well as in Premier Division, that it's that final 2 turns. You've got the initial kick into the Libby Hill cobbles, and then there's a couple of turns, and then there's these final 2 turns that end up being where the race is usually won. Tugels is the type of rider, and there's not many like them, that might be able to go more bottom to top. Just ramp it up to 11 and stick 11 watts per kilogram all the way, 10 or 11, to the line. We'll see if he's able to pull that off. We've seen him do it before, but I saw him in contesting the sprint just now, which tells me, is he looking to lead the team in what we're seeing in the Premier Division, Ovid type style, or is he just going to be committed to these sprints up front and not caring about Libby Hill? I'd be really surprised by that. I was definitely expecting him, especially the type of rider he just likes to win. I mean, there's that reality as well that, we'll see if he keeps on contesting these. I have a feeling he might be backing off of that initial sprint, but he could prove me wrong.
Yeah, he's the kind of rider that I would definitely highlight for that Libby Hill finish. He definitely suits it both with the attacking style that he has and also physiologically. So perhaps he's just sitting up the front to stay out of trouble, bearing in mind that there is a danger through those sprints. There is a real danger that an attack and a break will go. And if you've got good legs and you're on it, and there's our man riding uh, really strongly at the front. Now
He
he's not
just dropped an
attacking, bear
arrow
that in
power up.
mind.
No, that's 10 watts per kilogram. This is
Is
a
he
full,
listening?
like, what is going on here? This is, I mean, he's throwing it right back at WLC. Like, okay, boys, you want to chase me down? Go ahead and give it a go. Maybe didn't take down that fish sprint and says, I mean, is this like, am I just going to blow the race apart? We have, at 116 points, there's no risk. Are they just having fun with the race out here today and see what they can make happen, perhaps?
Yeah, they've certainly got the opportunity to do so. And I would say that this isn't, possibly the most strategic of moves to go this far out in an intermediate sprint, with the theory being that you really only have to cross the line by a millimetre first to take those points. But he's making the others work for it. I do think he's having a little bit of fun with it. He might get pipped across the line here by Martins, but he may well hold off the rest and still take those second points.
Oh,
And he will. So Martins went over the top, but that was the longest lead out that we've seen in any of the racing so far, in any of the laps. We've seen a lot of laps, and that was the longest lead out so far. I do think maybe they're having a bit of fun, but look at the gaps here. Whoa, this is Splitsville. This is quite unpleasant for a number of those riders at the back. You've got to move up and stay safe here.
Well, I think this is what BZR are up to, is that they saw the reality of making those early attacks around the corner there. If they keep the speed high enough, this might just continue to split and whittle things down. You know, you come in expecting this flat parade, and this is anything but a parade. So very cool to see what BZR is doing here. Spot on to them. One thing I did want to point out about the current standings here is that WEZ and Fusion, along with DBR, Cryo RDT, they're all in it here still. They can all, depending on who finishes where on the day, Cryo RDT have a really good day, DBR have a really good day, WEZ have a really good day, Fusion have a really bad day. You could see a situation here where things really change up in the overall standings. And that second spot, that battle with Fusion right now, if they do not hold on, that is a playoff spot in 2 weeks from now. So everything's on the line between Cryo RDT, DBR, and WEZ. We're going to keep an eye on that throughout the day here today, just to get an idea of, where things end up amongst the riders for that final spot into the playoffs.
And when we can get them through, we'll take a look at those intermediate sprint results, because yesterday what we saw happening was Deepak was taking the first over the line honours in those intermediate sprints, but Beast Mode was actually stacking second through fifth largely. But we thought that put Beast Mode in quite a dominant points position. But when we then looked at fastest through segment, it flipped it completely on its head, and Deepak had actually quite strategically gone for those fastest segments and gained a whole lot of points on the way. So there's quite a few different ways to approach getting points, given kind of the nuances, the ins and outs of how you score points here. This is an interesting move, Nathan, because a break of 4 can actually get some traction. 1 or 2, it would be difficult. But 4 burgeoning out to 5 here, a couple of seconds going at this speed. 2 seconds is hard to break down when you're going 60k an hour.
Yeah, and you do see it's all Vision riders, actually, with one Eddie Uli. And Eddie Uli, if anybody can stay away, it is going to be him. So great to see. Really taking initiative here in the race. And it looks like it's going to most likely be trying to work out this little bit of it might bring a couple across here at this point as well, through the uphill falls flat on each lap. It looks like the pack is going to kind of shut this down. It's a good mood. It is a race of meters, though, on these breaks. And it could still stick as long as they need to stay committed, though, if it is going to happen. They do get one more rider involved here at this point. Is that going to be another big rider, actually? So 2 riders now backing off. Maybe Saunders just slingshotting. WZ now coming across Is the speed going to be there, though, as we do see Pettinger continue on? Now Saunders going back to the group, and it does look like the speed may be a little bit too, well, it's always this touch and go. It really is when it comes to these kind of breakaway situations. Only 3 now, though, and it does look like Eddie Uli, 182 beats per minute here. Loves from Vision here, Sylvania, 179 beats per minute. Pettinger's there, 177. If you look at the front end of the pack, only at 167. They get the tempo along and kind of just watch them burn some matches off the front here. And with so many riders in the pack, a lot of motivation to keep things together. I'm not sure this is going to stick.
This won't be the one to stick, I agree with you there, but I do think that it indicates that there's quite a number of different teams who are out there to push it as hard as they possibly can and see if it possibly can stick. Having 3 or 4 Vision riders in a 5-person break is unlikely to succeed, just given the dynamics and what that throws back to the chasing peloton. They're unlikely to let that go. A smaller group with 1 or 2 Vision riders might have a little bit more of a chance. They're kind of playing a bit of a game here. They're just slowly reeling them back in. But this is where the danger comes for attacks to go over the top. And that looks like that's exactly what's happening, because that is a big acceleration we're seeing at the front there. And it's a Tron bike that's riding away. Let's chat about which bike is best for these. A lot of the previous weeks, we've just seen a sea of Tron, and that has been the best overall bike. But what do you think for tonight?
It depends on what you really want to accomplish on the day. I think we have seen a lot of these the Venges, actually, S-Works, really making the moves in the sprint, as well as even over the top of Libby Hill. Libby Hill is not quite long enough of a climb. The speeds, the reality of how fast that they are going to be attacking Libby Hill. We do see a lot of trends as all-arounder bikes. Tugels now on the attack, as you do see, not able to hold on again, making things very difficult. Now it is going to be DBR coming on through for some points, I believe. Or is that going to... Yeah, DBRRT going to take that down, followed up by Kalman again from Fusion. Fusion definitely going to be on this, though, to try and hold on to that second place overall in the series. Cryo T are involved in that sprint, so still plenty of points on the line. We'll try and get those through as soon as possible. But on the bike selection, for me, again, I'm the Venge S-Works with the 858 Supers. That's my opinion on the day. The best setup that you can possibly get, because drafting comes down to speed in game. The higher the speeds, the better the draft, as well as the reality of the speeds over the top of Libby Hill. It just cuts through that CDA in the game, that cuts through that drag in the game so incredibly quickly. The speeds do not get low enough on a 1-minute climb that I think a lighter weight climber bike, or even an all-arounder like the Tron, is going to be the most beneficial. Probably have a couple other opinions out there about that, as you do see the opinion of the field. Maybe more from a fashion design, not sure, but the Tron bike
goes
definitely
into it.
Exactly. So I think the Tron popular there, but my take, Venge 858.
There's actually a disproportionate amount of time gets spent on avatar design and chatting about it, I reckon. So definitely what the look of the Tron goes into it. Another move off the front here, Aquino and Neeson. I don't know that this was necessarily a giant attack, but look at Neeson's in the orange, just trying to jump across and hold that wheel. World Elite Zwifters, we talked about their motivation today, because if they have a good day, they are still definitely able to jump up into that second overall position. This is actually starting to open up quite nicely. It's out to 2-3, bouncing between that 2-3 second mark. If it hits the 5 to 10, that's when we can think it's serious and the bunch is letting them go a bit. We can see from that shot that the bunch is fanned out a bit across the road, but they are travelling at pretty high speeds. It would be a very big ask for 2 riders to go solo, still for 16 kilometres left. But in saying that, every time the bunch does chase and bring any breakaway back, inevitably what happens, Nathan, is that another 1 or 2 attack over the top. So it's not a bad idea to kind of keep them at a little bit of distance within the range that they can jump across or chase them back when it's crunch time, but not so close that you're kind of waiting and setting it up for somebody to attack over the top.
This is committal as well here, coming from WEZ. We did see a power up being used there with the feather power up. So down into the 3% negative gradient. This is the difficult part, to try and stay away from the group. Now, as they get into the left-hand turn, maybe a couple of them may come across. They're going to have to attack into this uphill grind. They're going to hit right about now. Orange numbers is what we're going to have to see from them to stay away, I think, at this point, because we do see BZR on the front. 6 watts per kilogram or so, a couple other power-ups, and I think they're going to just roll right on through. Going to be taken back, but I think from here, the question is whether or not we're going to have a counter, perhaps from another team. This would be an opportune time. I'd be definitely, look at my chops thinking, okay, where is the attack coming from right now? This is a perfect launch point if anybody's feeling good. Has been sitting in waiting for a moment. Doesn't look like there's going to be much of anything here at this point, though. I think they're going to calm down and look for that third sprint on the day.
It's a very good time for a counterattack. When they're going this fast, you have to be pretty well positioned to be able to do the attack. If you can't gain a couple of 4 to 5 kilometers per hour increase in speed, the gap's just not going to open up very quickly at all, and that is pretty tough to do when they're already traveling 50k an hour. I will say that. There is definitely a thought that once you pass about the halfway mark, which we've already passed, or maybe even that 20k mark, that's the point where if it's all still together, you then regroup and go into kind of end of race mode, where you're really thinking about those late attacks that might come on that lead in into Libby Hill or even on the lower slopes. So I think we'll see a bit of a change in the attitude and the way that the bunch is riding and also reacting to things. It's one thing to let a couple of riders duck off the front in the first half of the race, but it's an entirely different thing to let that happen on the lead into Libby Hill. Last night we did see Jenny Petnan do that, a very successful attack on the lower slopes, and then she went on to win by nearly 40 seconds. That was the most successful individual ride, but for the most part, they did come in as a bunch of sorts. Oh, look at this, Nathan. The segment points are up, and this is interesting. Look at that fastest through segment plus that first over line. That is a huge amount of points there that can be accrued like that. And Togles, who we've been speaking about a lot because of how impressive his ride was, he's down on 18 points with Van Ruth on 46, so a massive differential, and that all goes into the fastest through segment time. So that's become a bit of a secret player on this course, I reckon, Nathan. How to get the points is to line up that first segment, that sprint segment on the first or second lap, simply for time, not for points.
Yeah, that's a great point. And coming on through for the timing on it is very, very tactical. We do see Offerman's now 10.3 watts per kilogram. A little bit of it off the front here. Who is the rider? Is that going to be Nortoft? This is a big move here by DBR, because DBR, as you guys are seeing, Gel as well as Hansen there in 5th and 4th. There's BZR coming on through for 2nd. But DBR, we did see them in the standings. They are one of the teams here that still have an opportunity to make a move. WEZ with that 46 points. That is a big lead here from a single rider, but we're not seeing a whole lot of World Elite Zwifters there in the rest of the top 10 for the points. DBR with consistency there with 4th and 5th. They grab some more points here just now with that first across the line, start making their way up through. Now, Alexi Kalman, though, with that 40 points, that is going to be that's going to be something that needs to be on the radar of the rest of these teams here, because let's just take a quick look at the current standings. Now, if we look at this points table versus the current situation on the standings, that's going to tell a story here, because Fusion ECT at that 105, Alexi Kalman, he is going to be trying to hold on, obviously, along with the rest of Fusion ECT, that second place overall in the point standings. WEZ, though, with Van Ruth, 103, that's the battle right here. Now, Fusion, they need to slip backwards in the overall, because it's 20, 19, 18, 17, all the way down to 1 point for at the end of the day for the teams and how they end up placing on this point scale. So Fusion, they definitely need to slip down to 3rd, 4th, or 5th for any of these other teams like CrowdAT, DBR, WEZ. Really, DBR and WEZ in the points from we're seeing so far. They're the ones that seem to have the opportunity right now to maybe jump over the top of Fusion. Fusion only with Alexi in that board that I could see. So there's a little risk still here, and there's a lot to fight for.
I liked Van Ruth last week. He had really good legs. It doesn't surprise me to see his name up there again. And again, that it's the strategy of looking at the segment time plus the first over the line that is really impressing me at this point. And it is such a tight overall leaderboard. And when you are hoping that when your part of your team strategy, Nathan, includes another team having a bad day, that's when you're in really shaky territory, I think, because that you cannot control that. And I actually feel like that's quite a clear message coming out of some of the teams here, that they're not just going to wait for the other teams to potentially have a not good day. Instead, they're really going to take it to them. It's interesting, isn't it, how the speed is so high, but really at the moment, nobody is wanting to take too much responsibility. This is quite a change from what we saw in those first couple of laps. It's quite marked, but it is a much smaller bunch already. They've lost quite a number of riders just in that yo-yo effect going through the sprints. So even though it is a big bunch, it certainly hasn't been a roll in the park for them.
Not one bit. I think probably a little bit of a surprise to some of the riders. That's for sure. The way that they came out swinging immediately. We do see now making way to the front. It's going to be Helnonen. I wonder if WEZ may be trying to make a move. They're going to have to start taking some risks, I think, if they really want to be involved for this overall. As they do still have Van Ruth. These are updated points that did come on through. It does look like Van Ruth did grab a couple of extra here. Alexi Kalman, though, with another go. Does grab, it looks like, an extra 5 points. 2 goals, 18. It does look like Yoni de Buck there for BZR with 18 as well. DBR still sitting in 5th and 6th here. Now, though, we are seeing it looks like a couple of more DBR riders jumping into that 7th and 8th taking over there. That is going to be a threat. Maybe consistency in numbers from DBR RT right here. And they're going to need a couple of more, though. I think that final kick across the line is going to be what they're going to be looking forward to as well. Again, if we take a look at the standings, I know I keep on focusing on this, but this really is an up to, moment by moment situation, I think, between the situation as DBR. They're going to need a solid 4. Usually have to fall back pretty significantly. And WEZ are going to have to place themselves right in the middle of everything on that point scale. But, I mean, with Van Roof at the top there, we'll see how that ends up playing out. They're heading into the final sprint here in just a moment. And we'll see if we have a couple more extra texts. But I think a lot of the riders here right now, from what we're seeing the pack do, I think, Kate, are thinking mainly about this last sprint in Libby Hill. I would not be surprised if we have a counter over the top, though, after this final sprint, maybe with a rider who wants to try and get away. I'm thinking WLC. I'm thinking Team Experimental. Cryo RDT. They've all been kind of quiet so far in these sprints as we look at the points overall. None of them are in that, Cryogen here at the bottom with 9th and 10th, but nothing really significant. Perhaps saving for a counter to go, or everything over the top, Livy with consistency over for a top 10 first across the line.
They're heading into kind of last chance territory, aren't they, to make sure that they leave everything out there. And if they don't favour themselves on Libby Hill, certainly over the top of this last sprint is the way to go. They'll come down here, do that hairpin that we've seen so many times already. That's when they open out into the sprint. Really solid tactics by Van Ruth. I think that he's kind of nailed it in terms of go hard and go early, get that fastest through segment, pick up some sprint points, and then be able to sit in the pack, recover a little bit for that Libby Hill. So I would actually look to him to be one of the big names to watch coming into Libby Hill if there isn't a small group getting away. But this is where the action starts, Nathan. They're onto that run into the sprint. The power-ups are being dropped. And Van Ruth, he is right up there in the action.
Yeah, but Nordhoff, again, DBR, looking to take it down. It's going to be that arrow power-up. Van Ruth trying to come on through. He might be able to do it, even with the arrow power-up. Kalman, consistent Kalman, though. 3rd place, it looks like. Fusion really have a rider in Kalman. There's a reason why he's got that flag on his back. Absolutely amazing to see. Simon Nielsen, nice little shout-out to him. Lurston comes on through for DBR with a solid result as well. We'll see if we can get some points in just a moment. Now they're going to be thinking about Libby Hill. I do not see any counters coming on through. Not broken up too much at this point either. I think everyone who's involved here is going to be able to make this stick because I do not see anyone really driving the pace at the front. So it's all most likely going to be coming back together. I think most of the riders at the back here are just sitting pretty, trying to keep the heart rates down. Attacks through this next section. There's a lot of downhill into the industrial park. It does make it very difficult to try and get away because of the types of speeds that a pack like this will be able to hold. You'd have to be essentially superhuman type strength to try and get away from a pack like this in a TT situation, unless you were able to really organize like a 5, 6, 7, 8 man breakaway. Most likely would be all for naught.
Yeah, this is going to be a very tough ask to have a break go now, just given the sheer numbers and how on alert everybody is. This is also the section of the race where some good guidance from a team management perspective can really come into play when you have quite a calm voice reminding them to keep their cadence in a good range. Don't overgear yourself. Don't undergear yourself. Take a drink. Drop those ears away. Drop the shoulders away from the ears and really make sure you reset the body and get it going and ready for Libby Hill. If you hit Libby Hill already completely redlining, you just have nowhere to go and the race will very quickly get away from you. So it's almost 2 segments left in the race, Nathan. I think it's get to the bottom of Libby Hill in the best shape that you possibly can and very consciously taking care of yourself. And then once they hit Libby Hill, well, you've got to throw it all out there and absolutely just let it go and see what happens. It's a bit of a deceptive climb in that when you go over that KOM climb, you think, is this it? Am I really on it? And you can almost, I think, feel quite calm about what's to come. But the minute that they turn that corner, hit the cobbles and it goes up to 10%, if you are not out of your seat and really producing a lot of power, you lose a lot of speed and very quickly.
Wanted to jump over real quickly here. We do have the East 2 Division 1. These are for playoffs as well. These are fairly decided here at this point, though. Part of the reason why we weren't covering it, we did say coming into the season that we were going to focus a lot on the current situation for those that are in for the playoffs into the final couple of weeks. It is going to be GTFBE as well as 2 guys that are at the top end of this racing here with E2 Division A1 here amongst them. So we'll get a look and see if we can get some of the information about what the sprints are for them as well as where the standings are for them. Just wanted to give a little bit of a shout out and a highlight, dude. FZR here coming on through. It looks like the Finnish team, solid result for them in the sprint here with Valve. We will jump back to E1 as well in just a moment for the A1s where there's that playoff battle really happening between Fusion and DBR RT, excuse me. But I am trying to see if we can find some of the standings here for this, some of the point standings here for this category. We'll just plaster them over the top here. This will give you guys an idea of where things are at. 115, 114 here. This is the current situation. Zwift Kids, WZ3, and FCR as we just saw them sprint across the line. But as you can see, 115, 114, not really going to be going anywhere for these team standings here, Kate.
No, it's fairly done and dusted in terms of the top 2 here. So they will still definitely be racing for pride. And we touched on it last night in APAC. It's also a chance at this end of the season for some riders to put their hand up and show their stuff to other teams, potentially to get recruited, not only within these community leagues, but potentially some of those Prem League teams who always have their eye out for a fair bit of talent. So there's a lot of different things that are at play, definitely. And the overall points is certainly only one of those. It has been across both this Div 1 and Div 2 a fairly consistent show of tactics in terms of sprint hard for those points. The race strings out, it gently kind of comes back together, and then they do it again the next lap. Look at this on the right, though. This is a very big field carrying a very high amount of speed, and they're not too far out now from hitting that flat and that earnest lead in to Libby Hill. This is where a lot of posturing happens. It actually surprises me, I have to say, to see people in the super tuck, because that's a bit of a risk at this point in the race, that your legs go a little bit dead, that slight break and taking the pressure off can sometimes actually do the opposite of what you're intending them to do. You think a little break will be nice, but we've all had that feeling where you stop at a coffee shop or you go down a descent, and the minute you start trying to pedal again, it feels like you've got lead in your legs. So I almost think it's a bit of a gamble to completely stop pedaling, even for short sections, when you've only got a couple of kilometres left to race.
Are seeing John Mold now make his way to the front. Lots of super tucks taking place now at this point. I am seeing a pink kit now with, is that going to be an Evo rider actually with Williams? Haven't seen Evo toward the front end of this race much at all. A little bit of a, looks like maybe just finding a good position. Now, what was interesting for a moment there, we saw Vision again making a move. I think today they were trying to get into some sort of breakaway over and over again. Really put a lot of effort into it. It may end up stinging them in the tail of the race out here today. Again, the positioning going to be so incredibly important at this point. Always trying to find the front end of the pack without sticking your nose in the wind. There is a little bit of a jaunt here in just a moment, a 3% uphill gradient. Maybe see a little bit of a kick. We did see a small attempt at a breakaway in the A pack over this little jaunt here, but I'm not sure that's going to be happening with such a large group. It's going to be a left-hand turn. It's only about 3K at this point to the finish line, about 2K, a little less than that even, to the bottom of Libby Hill. So Amancio now, everyone's going to be thinking about, as we do see Amancio making his way to the front, WEZ. WEZ going to be thinking about stacking the top end of those of this field. We're going to be really DBRRT, I think, at this point. Also, really have their hopes up, I think, for something. Cryo RDT, I think they may be out of it at this point, but Eddie Uli, he's always one to watch out for a win. We've seen him do it time and time again.
Yeah, he's got some really good power numbers and that really suit this. So when we talk about sprinters for this kind of race, it's really the 15-second long sprinters or the power sprinters who can get up to a speed and just hold it and build on it. Because once they do hit those kind of last two corners, it really is that makes a big difference. Unexpectedly this week, they have a feather power-up because going in, they weren't supposed to have the feather. I think that could come in really handy for the people who were paying attention last night and aren't rocking up and all of a sudden discovering the feather. So if they did have a bit of time to consider that within their strategy, using a feather can be a really great chance as soon as it gets to the steep section to really consolidate that speed and attack. That is a very good time to use a feather on a climb. I think if you're using it when you're already suffering, Nathan, it's probably a little bit too late. So that can be used in quite a strategic way. Now, this is an interesting kind of show of power from Amancio. The gap isn't opening up too much. The bunch is certainly paying attention, but he has forced them to increase that speed a little bit, and this is where the posturing is really starting to come out in earnest.
That was quite the tactic there for just a moment. Did force 6 watts per kilogram plus at the front end of the race. Maybe some of the riders here sitting mid-pack may get an advantage from that, be able to sit in from a turn of speed at the front that they just get an advantage from without a lot of effort. Now it does look like the front end of the field with WLC. It's going to be Wahoo Lacole, I think, on the attack. Cameron Jeffords here sitting at 7.1 watts per kilogram. Halnonen now to the front. It looks like that is going to be Ed Laverick. That's exactly who I thought it would be on the early attack, trying to go bottom to top. But Eddie Uli here now with 12 watts per kilogram. Is he going to be able to hold on all the way to the top? This is an early move. Usually does not stick. Tugel's now trying to chase it down. But Eddie Uli, we said, can he be consistent all the way to the line? We saw him do this actually on the Volcano, and it stuck.
He's definitely the one that can do it. He's got the legs. He's hit the cobbles now. It's this next corner where it really seems to bite, but he's out of the seat. He dropped that power up at a perfect time, Nathan. This is looking good for him. The race is on, especially from Tugel's. They're coming quickly. Those power-ups are being dropped. Oh, he's got to get out of the seat and push this all the way, I think, but he's going to hang on, Nathan. What a ride.
Eddie Uli again sticks it from bottom to top. That almost never happens. And the South African takes down some of the strongest racers in the world of Zwift. Hugels, the man that I thought was the Terminator, almost unstoppable, unable to close it down. We'll take a look at a replay on that in just a moment here. We're going to jump on back over to the other division here while we try and bring in a couple of the replays as well as the other categories within here. We are into the East 2 Division 1A1 here as we watch them finish out their final climb over the top of Libby Hill in just a moment. But what a kick there from Eddie. He shows us again he keeps on making me eat my words with the kind of power that this guy has, because I said last week, oh yeah, the 2-tier, you got to wait till the second kick into the volcano. It's not going to work ever. And Eddie says, no, I'll show you how this works, Nathan. And he'll cross the line with a solid 1 second gap. And he does it again. Amazing kick there coming from that rider riding for CrowdGen.
Yeah, that's the kind of ride that team managers make their riders rewatch to say, this is how you do it. This is the exact way to race a Libby Hill and to race it well. Togles, though, second, and considering all those points he picked up intermediate, that might put him in a good position overall. I'm very interested to see where Van Ruth ended up there because he went in with the most points from those fastest through segment. And I think he would have been around there somewhere and perhaps, in fact, enough to take those points overall. So it's not just about first over line, but if it was, Eddie Woolley certainly did a bit of a masterclass on that.
I'm going to bring in a replay here. It does look like it was a solid chase. I thought for sure that, I was thinking that it was just a little bit too early. This is in reverse here. We'll see if we can make it go forward. And, we do have Eddie here, 9.6. I saw him fading here. I thought Tugel's coming at that 12 watts per kilogram for a moment was going to make it happen. A lot of times in this final kick to the line, we do see right at this moment, Avatar's up and out of the saddle, 38 kilometers per hour, though, able to make it happen. BZR, though, 2 riders on the chase. That's going to be some solid points for them as they come across the line, actually, and really solidify their lead at the top. They didn't actually need it too much. Actually, it looks like 4 riders, perhaps, across the line. CCNS getting in the middle of all of that. That's going to put a wrench in all the rest of the riders who Cam Jeffers is there. Ellis, we're seeing CCNS. Peach, we're seeing Fusion ECT way down. Where's WEZ? I mean, if you look at that rider nearby list, you really are seeing that not a whole lot of the teams that we were talking about maybe having some sort of a chance at getting some extra points here, Kate, not really involved. It looks like some of the other teams, they're snatching some of those points across the line, and it looks like we're most likely going to stick with BZR at the top along with Fusion ECT because Alexis Kalman's work here on the day.
It seems to be playing out where what's happening in the race for the most part around those sprints is quite different to what's happening on that final climb. We're seeing a completely different set of riders come to the fore, and it's a lot less about team and a lot more about individual grunt. And knowing that for any teams in a bit of a tight race for any overall position, I think we're learning that the most control they can possibly have is actually through those intermediate sprints and trying to go quite heavy on the points there rather than relying on anything to happen on Libby Hill. We keep seeing riders that we would pick on Libby Hill who are strong in their individual and own right. But from a team front, it's really not playing out as we might have expected. The strong teams on paper are not lining themselves up there and having a huge impact. So it's a bit of a curious strategic flow that's coming out of this course. It looks like it would just be one straight for the sprinters, but it's proving, despite the big bunch size, it's proving to be quite different to that.
This is the race here with two guys, WEZ, and the battle there with GTFBE, the Belgian team. Now, this is going to be a race here, not necessarily for a playoff position, but who wins outright on the series here for this EMEA East 2 Division 1A. Again, as you can see here, it is GFT-BE, 115 points. Two guys, Karamula, the 114. The rest of these teams here not really involved for the playoff position, but It is tied with FCR and WEZ for pride here at this point. 4th and 5th place. Zwift kids are 103. Not seeing too many of the Zwift kids at the front end of the race here at this point. So this is the current situation. 2 guys versus the Belgian team. That's going to be the battle over the top of the climb here in just a moment. We'll see if we can bring in some of the splits here as well for this. To get an idea of where things have been coming in for the overalls. I'm not sure we're getting any premiums. We are having a little bit of struggle with the Zwift Power data at this point for this specific event, but we will be able to see how things play out over the top of Libby. We'll jump in with the C category and D category in the E1 in just a moment. Women's race is starting in 15 minutes from now, and we'll be able to jump in with them as they do get out on course in just a few.
It's proving to be a pretty fast course overall. They go out of those pens like the clappers, and then it doesn't really slow down. This is the only section of course where there really is a big build into that Libby Hill, and they're rolling in knowing that they just have to get ready. This is, quite a low heart rate, 135, but still pretty high powers that we're looking at there, and definitely very high speeds. The riders for the ones that are going for that overall victory for the series, they can approach Libby Hill very differently from the riders who have nothing to lose and therefore everything to gain. And I think that is why we're seeing so many individually different teams going well up Libby Hill. We're really not seeing too many double ups in that top 10. It's quite, in that way, quite a grunty, pure climb for the athletes to get to the top of. But if they aren't in that top 10 when they hit the cobbles, then they're too far back, because at that stage, those high powers are already starting to get put out and the speed is already pretty high. So this is almost a bit of a promenade in. The speed is pretty high, the nerves are very high, but they do need to position themselves well.
It's a really good point to bring up, and something I think a lot about in racing out on Zwift, as in racing bikes in general, that razor's edge of how to find that exact place you need to be, the right amount of risk to the right amount of reward. Amongst a pack like this, you can find yourself in the wrong position so incredibly quickly by reserving too much, waiting too long. But at the same time, how much have I risked to go into the red, to be in the right position, to be in the top 5, the top 3? Where exactly is it that you want to be? What wheels to follow? And a lot of times for me, it's about marking the right person as well, knowing who your competition is and whether or not a move from someone is going to make, anything happen. You might be trying to mark a top 3, a top 4 position, but the guy you really need to be working about, or the guy you need to be working about, is like 2 or 3 positions behind you, and they end up sitting on your wheel. So it's so incredibly tactical, and making sure that you're in that perfect position takes a lot of finesse, actually, to find in and amongst a pack like this. And then the timing, so incredibly key. And then there's always the wild card, like an Eddie Uli, that just goes from bottom to top. You're like, all right, that was the man I should have marked, because he's just gone.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between knowing exactly who to mark and then being able to react. But when you mark the wrong person and then you aren't able to react to the right person because you just hesitate for a moment, it's almost absolutely all over within a couple of seconds. You're not even thinking that they're losing the race in those final meters. They're actually losing it when that early attack even happens in the first place. Quite consistently, we've had 1 or 2 riders push quite hard from the bottom of that KOM line, which we just saw them go over. It's quite deceptive. It looks like it's still flat, but in fact it's 7%. So that definitely is a bit of a visual illusion there. When they take this right-hander up here and onto the cobbles, that's where it's bust or nothing. I'm always interested, and this has been playing out a lot, Nathan, how many power-ups are getting dropped before they even hit the cobbles?
Yeah, they're very, very early. I think a lot of riders are struggling at this point in order to just hang on. Maybe a little bit of nerves that are making that happen. Now this is going to be the final corner. This is usually where the race is won. This is going to be DBR Warriors here on the front, 12 watts per kilogram. And Aberrante is trying to come across. Cartilage, it looks like there with 11 watts per kilogram, maybe to the line, but it looks like it is going to be Enoj able to make it happen there. This rider here, the first one across the line for GFTBE, the question here was between Tugas and GFTBE. So it does look like, I believe, GFTBE perhaps able to hold on as they were one of the top uh, teams across the line. We'll have to wait and see what the final results were for those riders here. We're going to see if we can jump across to a couple of the other categories here. Probably the D category within E1 in just a moment, everybody. Apologies on the images when we are looking for other riders out on course. We do have to jump around a little bit for just a moment. But as we do look for that, the women will be starting up here in just a few. When we do try to cover a lot of the categories, we do get a little bit extra jumping around here. So just a little bit of patience on that.
We do have so many riders out on course. The EMEA geographical segment of this community league is our biggest. It is the wee hours of the morning here in Australia, a bit of afternoon in America, but the perfect time zone for the Europeans to jump in and get their racing done. You're doing an awesome job, Nathan, to get us these pictures with so many leagues and so many races going on as well. I find that funny when the avatars cross the line and then almost stop dead. That effort is just so massive that there is no halving it up. Libby Hill, you can't go up there at half an effort and just see how it goes. It's all in or nothing. An interesting occurrence here happening with the Ds, a small break. This is not something we've seen a lot of across all of the leagues, but we've got a couple of riders off the front there as well, chased by 4. The big pack is coming up behind them, but it does look like this break might actually have a decent chance to stay away because they don't have far left to go, only a couple of kilometres. And we know once they're on Libby Hill that you're not really able to pull a lot of that gap back because everybody is surviving. Even though on screen it looks fairly calm, when you see everybody start dropping their power-ups, you know that they're doing that just to survive and just to hang on. So this is a bit of the calm before the storm.
Yeah, and this is going to be the E1 D category here that we are looking at here. It is going to be the Kirchner Cycling D1s and D2s that are really dominating this front group, as you can see. Solid efforts here coming on through for them. We'll see what the current standings are. There may be a little bit of battle between some of these. We got the Herd in here. We've got the Vikings in here as well. You can see their in-kit games here with Herd. I'm always loving this kit because they've got all the animals that are representing the Herd on the back of it. Vikings, as you can see here, obviously the Norwegian team hammering away at the front here, 159 beats per minute. Now, we did miss the B and the C finishes because, I mean, the course is so incredibly flat that the speeds are fairly high. So because of that, the finishing times are very close to each other. And so sometimes difficult to get across to the other images of this. But D category now, it does look like a little bit of an attack here coming from the SZ team. Swedish Swifters now. Von Schenk here making a move. And we do see in the D category, once in a while, these are able to stick if they can get a little bit of a gap and hold all the way to the line. As 4.1 watts per kilogram on the front, 152 beats per minute, 440 watts. This is a monstrous effort.
The D category are often still really shaping their strategic minds, trying new things, seeing what happens and how it reacts. Sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between their experience level and the sheer number of watts they're able to output. And sometimes we flip across to these categories and it's so impressive the amount of power that they're putting out. And we think, what category are we watching here? They're putting so much out, but strategically, it does take a little bit of time to kind of develop that craft. And I've been impressed across the board in the community league just how much that's evolved from the first week to the final week. We're now in week 7 of 8, and it has really sharpened. There's a lot of teamwork that's developed where in that first week, maybe it was kind of like herding cats rather than some of these other herds that they do have.
Herding cats right now. It looks like across the images. There, we got back to it there. Apologies, everybody. Shemming here now as there was a cat amongst the pigeons in the in the broadcast images.
There's a lot of animals going on here.
There's all kinds of animals happening here, but it does look like stemming here now. D1 out of Germany, KC, and that is where that team is coming out of, actually, with Kirchmer Cycling. Now, as Schemming and Crest look to be taking this down, it looks like this is going to be a sweep across the board, actually, for the KC teams. In that Bumblebee kit that they like to use, nothing but black and yellow now across the line.
I think there's a song about that. Black and gold. Pretty close anyway. We'll get you to belt that tune out later. Well, this is a big move from the same team, but over the top. It looks like it may be Dennis here. That is a big gap that opened up. He was out of the seat all the way to the line. Surprised Cress and Schemming a little bit. Good overall result for the team. They got that top four, regardless of who crossed that line first. But wasn't that a good effort to jump across at the finish there? I like to see them ride all the very way to the line, Nathan. It shows they've got a little bit of pizzazz when it's not enough for them to just roll over in second or third.
And every single one of these places actually matters. We do see the BZR Gorillas coming across the line, the Herd, every one of these riders fighting for points for their team. That's one of the great things about the Zwift Racing League. I know we've been focusing a lot on the front end of the A category out there today, but there's also the reality that each one of these riders that we're watching over the top of Libby Hill in every one of the categories are fighting for their team right now in order to get as many points as they possibly can to move up in the categories, as well as get the best result across Season 2 of the Zwift Racing League into race number 7. Every single one of these efforts definitely matters.
And they do have points that go quite deep, so they're a lot deeper this season than they were previously. And a reason for that is to really encourage the riders to push all the way to the line and never to think, oh, well, I'm not in that top 10, so what's the point? But it is now important, no matter where you are, that you push to try and finish in that top 80. The points go 80 deep. So I would think that that's quite a good impetus for the riders to go all the way.
We got to cross over a few more of the D category riders, but we do see, as you can see here, the women with 3:07 to start in the A category. There is a lot happening in this category, that's for sure. 2:59, as you do see a Saxo Watts rider now jumping on in, 85 in the pen. D category here finishing up with East 1, but the women's category for EMEA about to get going out onto Libby Hill after party. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the current situation for the standings for the women. And as we get into the racing, to get an idea of how this is going to be playing out, what the tactics might be.
We expect nothing but excitement out there tonight. And Project Beast Mode, they are on the top of the table. And they will definitely benefit from their men's team racing last night in APAC and coming back and teaching them a few of the lessons. So great to see the teams working together across the different categories there. Turbo sitting in second, but they're in a pretty tight race for second with Socks for Watts. Watt the F, that's a good name, I like that one. There's only 1 point between them, so that is where the race is on tonight. And we need to pay quite close attention to the dynamics there. The Atomic Kittens, well, they could throw a kitten amongst the pigeons there because they aren't too far off. And if they do have a very good day, well, you never know what could happen. Ionian RT similarly on 100 points, so that top 5 are still pretty tight. Cryogen Stelvio sitting in 6th. The Bristol Flyers, Socks for Watts, Polka Dot Bombs. Now, here's the question, Nathan. Are the Polka Dot Bombs going to work with a What the F? That could be an interesting way to make sure they get those extra points, so we'll look out for that. Draft, ZRL and Sisu, I Race Like a Girl, rounding out that top 10. So there's a few races within a race, to use that old one, but Beast Mode is certainly looking like they're in control. They've got a couple of riders who tonight's course suits, so depending on what strategy they go for. The men's team, they certainly went for trying to stack that top 10 through those intermediate sprints. But I think that it's really worth noting that when it came out, when they looked at all of those fastest through segment as well as first over the line, that Deepak actually came out on top for utilising those extra points for the fastest through segment. So by this point in racing, I hope some of the ladies have been watching that and maybe considered tweaking their strategy a little bit to see if that they can pick up some sneaky points in that way as well, which is less obvious to anybody watching. It only comes out when the points come out, and so it can be almost a little bit surprising. So it's definitely something to keep their eye on.
That Turbo versus Sox Watts, this is going to be a heated battle out here today. I mean, this is going to be, the gloves are coming off. It's going to be, this is going to be carnal. I think, it's going to be full on, because that is, Sox or Watts and Turbo, there's some long standings athletes in the Zwift world and Zwift racing scene in both of those teams that I know they want to be involved in that premier division in a lot of ways. I believe they're fighting for it, and they've got the talent to be there. So, this is going to be quite the battle to try and get into the playoffs out here today. It's all on the line in these last two races out here. So in Sox Watts SBR cake here, really at the top there, it looks like 111 there, 100 there, top three. Not a whole lot's going to change, I think, out here today for that top three. There is some battles here in the 4th, 5th, and 6th places. You see Cryogen, Kreutfer. It's going to be Belgian Zwift Riders there as well. Then it's going to be WTRL Watts Up, BVRT, RCC Women in 8th there, R3R Bewitched, and Foods Fine. This is the current situation coming on into this race. And then in the C's there, Kate, Oni, and Chicas are at the top, tied with the Z Sunrays.
Oh, this is another heated battle here, isn't it, between those two? They will definitely be fighting it out, but also 3rd and 4th, Revo Galaxies and TSC Storm, only separated by 1 point. Cryogen Telegraph, they're back on 92 points. The Whatnots on 82 points. Heard of Cougar Chaos. Oh, that's quite a nice name. On 80 points. Bella Bello in 8th, Fearsome in 9th, and KRTC Hotter Than Hell. I feel like we've got a few feisty ladies out there tonight based on these team names in that C division. We might have to see if we can pick up some of that racing. I just get a feeling, Nathan, that it might be a little bit interesting.
The Chicas, the Cougars, the Fearsome, and it's Hotter Than Hell. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting pack battling it out there. The Herd of Dolphins are dominating the D category with the BRT Blazing Kittens 108. Revo Revels there in 3rd for 92 points. A battle for the podium there was with Scotland, only 2 points behind. Well, also with 5th place sitting there with Herd of Dolphins. All 3 of those are going to be battling for that 3rd place. KV Gross as well at 89. WTRL drafting Dinos there in 88 points in 7th. RWB Serrano Hams in 3rd. RCC Women D, and then Giant Camden Spokes and Mirrors. That is the situation. This is the women's EMEA West Division 1. Those are the current standings as we jump into the racing. The A's are out on course, and this is what we were talking about. Aeonian, Beast Mode, Sox for Watts, Turbo. That's the situation out here, and I've got my eyes on, what's Beast Mode gonna do? Are they gonna sit back and they're kind of gonna relax a little bit, gonna battle as much as they possibly can, show what they're worth? Because Sox or Watts, they're going to do everything they can to unseat Turbo and vice versa. Olivia Barrow here now, the Canadian, sitting in. Watch out for her in the sprint. Dia Thorvaldsen up toward the front as well, but already on the front. Is that going to be Rachel Elliott? Of course it is. Just making the race hard for everybody. It's what she usually does.
Yeah, she had the ride of the season pretty much last week on the Volcano, going solo up that 2nd KOM and time trialing it to the finish. She has said she's not necessarily suited to the sprint days, so I tend to think that we'll see Elliott using her strength, pushing off the front and just making everybody pay pretty hard for it rather than necessarily contesting all of those individual sprints. But, it's coming to the end of the season, and if we've learnt anything, Nathan, from the rubbish year that 2020 was, it's that you can't really expect anything. You've got to be agile. Everything changes. The minute that you are dead set that one thing will happen, pretty much the exact opposite will. Beast Mode is a really interesting one because in the men, we saw them very aggressive and really take it from the front. And that's kind of really, it's in the name, right? It's the Beast Mode thing to do is to make everybody work really hard for it. But strategically, is that the best way for them to race? I'm not sure about that. They do have a pretty strong overall lead, so they could probably afford to play around with tactics a little bit. But I do get the sense from them as an overall squad that they would like to go out with a bit of a bang, and really, even though they are leading the series overall, that they would want to leave with the impression that they are the strongest team. So they're in the orange jerseys. They're quite distinctive and easy to find, which is good for us and anybody watching as well. Zed Sun, another team always to watch there in the Rednicks with the white jersey, also very easy to pick in the pack. I think it's good when you can easily pick out the teams, both for each other, for the flow of the race, and of course for us as well. So they've now got quite a consistent flow across all the different categories with those similar jerseys.
I believe we do see Katie Kookaburra in here as well. She did do.
I'm sorry. Did you just say Kookaburra?
Yeah, Katie Kookaburra.
That's Kookaburra, Nathan, from the Aussie to the American.
See, I don't even hear the difference. I literally don't even. Didn't we just say the same thing? Did I not just say the same exact thing? Livia Barrow coming on through here now, as we do have 13 watts per kilogram. The turbo rider, I said, watch out for the sprint on this one. And there it is, even without the power up. Freebo comes on through at 10.4. That little bit of a kick on the back end. And is that good timing from the beast mode rider? No, it's not a counter attack. I thought perhaps maybe she was looking to time a kick over the top and give it a go. But Cryogen, this looks like
I think she just went a bit late, actually.
Yeah, a little late there. That's all that is. But it looks like Turbo able to grab some points, and they're already showing up. And putting Sox Watts on the back foot is a 1 point difference for a playoff position. Sox Watts really need to make something happen. But I think Turbo, they're living up to their name. They really are about the afterburners. They've got the power when it comes to these kind of sprints. And I think Sox Watts are a little bit more of an FTP, give us some climbs type racers.
Watching Tammy Miller, she's an under-23, quite a rising star. I think that's a name that sadly we'll stop commentating on pretty soon, Nathan, because I think she'll zip up to that Premier League. She'll get picked up pretty quickly if people are paying attention. It's good to see her toward the front, almost just showing a bit of confidence and that she's got some pretty good legs. It was an interesting move, I think, or lack of good timing is probably how we could say it better, from Beast Mode, because I thought what you did, is this a counterattack? Is this a really smart way to do it? But in fact, I think she just went a little bit too late and then had to decide what to do. But there is some gaps opening up already here. Kookaburra, that's how you say it, Nathan, Kookaburra. A bit of a gap opening up. You've got to be careful because small gaps on this course can really bite the legs. Even if you think it's just a second, it's not going to be too bad. We saw last night, we've also seen this morning, that those gaps do actually open up pretty quickly, causing the heart rates to go pretty high. I mean, look at that, 180 for Kookaburra. That in the first very early kilometres of the race, that is a very high heart rate. So she needs to just grab a wheel, settle in, and perhaps move further up the pack so that when that next sprint happens, she's in front of that gap that will inevitably form and not behind it.
Looking through, you also see a lot of those Sox Watts kits out of that main pack here, having to make some chases. Now, I do not believe that most of these are a part of the main Sox Watts WTF team that is looking to grab those points. I think most of them have made the front group, but that does take a couple of the riders across, a sister team here that would not be able to be involved to steal points or get in the way or help out on a break. So one turbo rider, though, that definitely is somebody that they're going to want to stay involved. That's going to be Curto there coming out of France. So want to get her back into that main pack. I'm wondering if she's struggling at 170 beats per minute, definitely up toward a threshold situation here for that heart rate. Sitting in, though, allowing everybody else to make the chase, as I don't think that there's going to be too much concern if they do have enough riders up toward the front. Always having everybody involved is good, but they have plenty of riders here still involved for Team Turbo. Looking through for Sox Watts, I am seeing a Despus is still involved here. I think all the main riders are maybe waiting Sox Watts for a second go, see what happens on the first one, and then see if they can take down the fastest segment time. There's still a lot of plays here for Sox Watts, but they're going to have to get on it. If we do look at the If we can bring in the leaderboards here in just a moment, we might be able to see what's going on with the sprint situation and what kind of the fastest segments as well as the fastest across the line, first across the line, excuse me. But Turbo obviously dominating so far.
Well, if they were to go for the target those intermediate sprints from a faster through segment time, that's where they can get a lot of the sneaky points. So it's not a show of weakness to sit back through that first one and see how it plays out. But you're right, Turbo have kind of thrown down the gauntlet and said, we're here, we've got good legs. What you're going to do about it. Do you reckon that the Socks for Watts teams are working together? How do we feel, Nathan? How do we feel about a bit of inter-team collusion going on? What's the general community feel on that one?
Well, I mean, it's in the a lot of time. I mean, it's in the rules. So if you can make it happen, it's part of the rules. You can have teams, across that can work together as much as they want. I mean, and the reality is regardless of the branding across, maybe Turbo has talked to Seesaw Race Like a Girl. Perhaps they talked to Draft. So I mean, there is some collusion that can go down across the teams for sure. At the end of the day, Socks for Watts, one of the teams is going to have to fully commit those. So if you spread out your talent too much, one of the teams might end up suffering for it. So there is that part of it as well, where, if they were to have too much talent on another team, the main team wouldn't be able to get through. So either way, it's a spreading of resources that team has, and need to make sure that they put it all into a single team as best as they possibly can. But I don't have a problem with the teams working together to try and make something happen at all, because anybody can do that regardless of the brand on their back.
That's exactly right, they can. And it is often we find, especially in the APAC League, there's a whole lot of AHDRL, the Aussie Hump Day Rider crews and the ladies crews as well. In the events, sometimes you have 4 or 5 teams per category. And at the beginning of season 1, we were thinking there's going to be a lot of collusion going on. But actually, it turned out to be quite interesting how competitive they were with what you would almost consider a teammate. So I think, they are racers and they did get on their bike to give this a decent go. That's a quick look at the course, and we can see all of those sprints, and they're quite prolific. It is reasonably flat. Now, this is a big move. Baldy has gone early Socks for Watts. This is what we were talking about, Nathan. Are they going for the fastest through segment? Because she's going to give this a crack. Will Baldy hang on over the line? She will. I think that she might also get that segment time. This is a very good move from them.
Yeah,
all of a sudden
Baldy,
they're in the bike race.
Solid, yeah. And that, so Olivia Barrow was second place. Olivia taking the last one for first, but Socks for Watts now first across the line. The segment point, that's going to be a tough one there. I'm going to take a look and see if we got any preems yet. No preems just as of yet from the women's side of things. As soon as we do grab those, we'll get them in for you. But a little bit of a break now. 1 second back. Will they continue on with Socks for Watts with Sheehan? I'm looking through here. Despus is not involved here, so I don't think there's going to be too much motivation from Socks for Watts. But if there is a team that I would expect a move to try and just get away, it would be Socks for Watts. You put Rachel Elliott and Cassie Baldy, Despus into a breakaway, that is danger, and that's a lot of points up the road, and that might be their best bet, is a counterattack here with the likes of Rachel Elliott to just try and demolish this. And Beast Mode, they're just following wheels at this point. They've got such a huge lead. It really seems to be like we said up front, Turbo versus Socks for Watts out there. Draft is still involved. BRT with the Kittens are here as well. We're seeing RCC, so don't count any of those teams out for the day. But the battle here for that second place is going to be the attention for everybody. And everyone's going to really be responding to that battle, I think, out here between Turbo and Socks for Watts, because they're going to be so a part of the instigation to try and make something happen to get the desired outcome that they want.
It's very compelling racing, isn't it? If you did get Rachel Elliott on the move and she had Cassie Baldy with her, that would be a very dangerous circumstance for any other team involved, because simply the time trialing diesel horsepower of Elliott and the explosive sprint of Baldy would be quite a good combination. That would be a great lead out onto Libby Hill as well. I think Cassie Boldy is a lighter rider, so she's got a very good watts per kg when it does come to that 15 seconds. So she's what I would definitely call dangerous going up Libby Hill. She is somebody to put a big circle around with your highlighter. But, again, Nathan, how many times have we said that's someone to watch? But when they do accelerate and when they go, it doesn't matter how closely they're watched. Nobody can really match the power. So that is an opportunity for some other riders who aren't being watched to maybe have a really well-timed jump out of the pack at that same point while all eyes are on the other riders.
Just saw Thorvaldsen up toward the front here as we start looking at some of the play-by-play moves here. Thorvaldsen now 4.1. I saw 1.0 for a second there, so I think she just stuck her nose in the wind a little bit more than she actually wanted to. It's going to be a left-hand turn, and I think there is a little bit of anxiousness about this next time through the false flat into the cobbled section, because I think there is a little bit of sting in the legs, a little bit of fatigue at this point here. Kelly now from Z-Sun. It looks like Thorvaldsen now 4.8 watts per kilogram, 5 watts per kilogram coming from Thorvaldsen. Surprising, actually. They were not the team that I was going to be expecting anything from, but perhaps this is a preemptive setup here for the reality of a Rachel Elliott push on the front. 5.8, I think they're fully expecting something from her, and there she goes into that 5 watts per kilogram, trying to make the race difficult. 5.6, 283 watts, 163 beats per minute right now. But they are sitting on, and I don't think it's going to really... I think it's just making the race difficult. I don't think it's really putting anybody out the back, though.
I don't think it'll split it up in so far as spitting people out the back, but that constant pressure just really wears on the legs for when they do hit Libby Hill. They started with 73 odd riders, I think it was. Let me just confirm. About 79 riders in the pack when they rolled out, or 85 we have on the rider screen. A few less in Zwift Power. But look at how small this bunch is now.
30 riders.
So it's easy. Yeah, it's easy to actually look at Rachel Elliott on the front and say, oh, she's pushing hard, but this isn't really getting sorted out. But you go to the back and it's quite a different story, isn't it? It is now a third of what it was at the beginning. And they're only coming into the third sprint now. They've only had 2. Remembering that they have 5 and then they've got to hit Libby Hill. This is pretty brutal.
It is brutal here, and it's been absolutely demolished from each and every one of these sprints and counterattacks. Beast Mode's been the conversation a lot of times, but it's been super quiet from them. I think they are biding their time, waiting for maybe the right moment for something. What would be kind of fun is if Beast Mode is watching everybody fight for points, and then they're like, okay, everyone's tired out here. Let's go for a counter attack for a full-on TTT of orange off the front. We do see the 3-4 orange jerseys here with Wagner. I'm seeing Carolus is in here as well. As we move our way forward through the pack, we're seeing Freibel, who we did see involved in one of the first sprints still. So still 4 beast mode riders who have all been pretty quiet. I would definitely expect that this is a calm before some sort of a storm from them, because being such strong riders and being at the top of the leaderboard as they are in the standings, there's something being saved up here. I would, you got to read between the lines a little bit with how quiet they have been so far. And I have a feeling we're going to see some action from them later in this race.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing that would scare me more with beast mode is more scary than them attacking constantly like they usually do is them not attacking, because then you're just sitting and waiting for it when. But they may have learnt quite a lot from what the men did last night and had a bit of a chat about it. And this is just their strategy. We definitely know that if they wanted to get on the front and attack, that they could cause a lot of damage. So it's they're showing a lot of control. I'm impressed with how much control they've shown so far. Boldy again, Nathan. She hits that line out of the seat, accelerating, and it is Wagner. Well, she's a zippy sprinter from the beast mode who is on it. Cassie Boldy goes backwards. Burrell from Turbo, but Adegeese from Aeolian. Whoa, this is actually, we're starting to get a few new names up here and in the mix there. That was interesting to see Cassie Boldy hit out quite early, but not be able to hold on and maintain that. Is that because she was just trying to sit in that top 10 and wasn't fully committed? That is hard to know from just the screen. But that was a very different sprint than we've seen so far. And quite different to what I was expecting, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you do see Ergest here. Solid kick from Cryogen. Miller was involved there, from Cryogen coming on through, but Aeonian able to take down some points there. Baro, the two turbo riders still with the consistency. It did look like, I believe, second and third, maybe fourth. So Turbo, I think, still dominating the point setup as we get back into the live images now. Every single lap, we have seen these sprints do a little bit more damage. Williams from BRT, we saw her struggling at the back end as Elliott pushed. And as you were saying, it does put some sting into the legs each and every time that she pushes on the front end of the pack. And again, another rider bites the dust off the back. Collins also from draft here. Baldy going early with that kick from the feather power up. I think that was mainly the reality of the power up that she had, trying to get the most that she possibly could out of it. And just not paying off because the speed's not quite as high compared to a drafting or an arrow power up that we saw from some of the other riders.
And unexpected because, again, going into this, they didn't expect to have the feather power up. So that has changed the way they may look at them and use them a little bit. Boldy, she's sitting back now, taking a bit of recovery at the back of the pack. I don't want to see her go too far back. It always makes me a bit nervous after a sprint when the good riders who have used a lot of energy through those sprints actually drift too far back, because we've seen gaps open up pretty quickly. It's an elastic band effect back there. If a 1 meter very easily turns into 10 meters, and even though they can chase it back and get back on, it can be pretty tough. So positioning is more important now than it has been at any point during the race. And we are kind of getting into the polished end, the business end here, because this bunch is smaller again. Dana Wagner, Nathan, I was happy to see Dana Wagner, the Beast Most rider, stick her head out in the wind a little bit in that intermediate sprint. She is somebody that I like for the overall. I think she'd be in a very good position up Libby Hill. And it looks to me like they are playing a pretty patient, conserving tactic. A lot of them sitting as a team. We can see the 4 orange jerseys at the back just sitting together, being very controlled. It's actually a really hard thing to do when you've got good legs in a race, to sit back and let it play out and not really be an antagonist until the end. So a good show of patience from those ladies.
Yeah, it really is. Wagner, the only one that we saw involved really at the front end. Now we do see it looks like another beast mode rider making her way to the front. Will we see any kind of concerted effort? And really, look at the size of this group now as it has whittled down a little bit more. I think there is going to be a little bit more confidence from some of the riders to maybe try and make some moves. I am seeing some blue kits making their way to the front. It's going to be Cryogen now with Rachel Elliott now. And again, her favorite part of the course, it goes uphill and makes it difficult. 6.2 again coming from her, 153 beats per minute. Her rate actually lower than last lap, actually, as she pushes on through. Cryogen sticking to the wheel. It does start to string out the elastic. Will it snap? I don't think so, but again, making things difficult. Sock Swats coming over the top here. WRT, that is going to be Shihan. Lots of Sock Swats toward the front here. I'm not seeing orange numbers. I think they're going to have to go into some orange number attacks, though. They're going to have some kicks rather than just making it difficult. They are going to get, any kind of distance between them and some of the other teams here at this point. And with Beast Mode and Turbo in here, Turbo, as you can see, still with 4 jerseys in the purple, very easy to spot here. Look at the bike selection as well from Turbo. As we take a look at the pack here, almost every one of them are on what I would call speedsters, like full-on sprinter type bike setups here. As we see Beryl, Thorvaldsson, and the rest, all of them are either 808s, 858s, the supers, and on the specialized Venges, actually. I don't see anything else but that.
I think that's a good bike selection. I think it shows their intention for today, that it is all about the sprint. And again, kind of honouring the power of that final climb up to Libby Hill. I think it's a really good choice overall. A lot goes into the debate around bikes and bike selection. Something that is worth considering is that even in this A category, we can't assume that they're all at the level of Zwifting where they have access to all of those different bikes, because a lot of these athletes will actually be in real life races who have jumped straight into the A category because physiologically they're capable, but they're not necessarily as experienced in game as some of the others. It's always a bit of a balance, isn't it? Seeing who really knows the ins and outs of the Zwift world versus who clearly have the legs and the lungs for it. It's always quite a good intersection when it comes, and that often comes out in bike choice, the use of power-ups and all those kind of gamified strategies that come into play.
Fairweather, a little bit of a kick from BRT off the front here. That was with a feather power-up. She does get, it looks like, a 7-meter, 8-meter gap. Rachel Elliott sitting on the front of the pack at 5.1, just looking to keep that within striking distance. We do see Cassie Baldi is sitting directly on the wheel here of Rachel Elliott. That is ordered to get the draft as best as the setup can possibly go, it looks like. Now, that BRT rider not going to be going much of anywhere, I don't think. Now, Adagast, who did take the last sprint, I think sitting in, waiting for the moment to pounce perhaps here. Wagner toward the front, 7.2 watts per kilogram, but it's going to be Barrel again. Olivia, always the sprinter. No power up from her here at this point from what I can see, though. Olivia Barrow, will she be able to take it without a power up? That would be absolutely amazing. 11 watts per kilogram, and she does so. No arrow, no draft, no feather from what I can see. Maybe we missed an early feather from her, but what a roll through coming from Olivia Barrow.
Well, in the turbo rider, this is exactly what they need. They need those sneaky points through those intermediate sprints. That was, if she didn't use a power up, and we don't think she did, that was quite a show of confidence, wasn't it? That's like really throwing it out there, like, you can throw everything you've got at me. I don't even need it. I've got this. The fact that she accelerated again about 5 meters from the line to 11 watts per kg, I feel like she's just warming up.
You know, it might also have been the Libby Hill on the mind. You know, we are heading into the final few Ks here, and there may be a thought here of thinking, you know, we're going to have one more sprint in just a moment, and I want this certain power up for the final sprint and some confidence, perhaps. But we may have just missed, you know, there might be a lot of assumptions going on here. We may have missed the power up used around the corner and a gain of speed early on, but seeing her not use a power up there, I have a feeling perhaps she has exactly what she wants for the final kick over the top of Libby Hill.
Even if she did use a power up that we missed, it was what was most impressive about the sprint was that she continued to accelerate even with 5 meters left to run. So she still had a lot left in the tank. It's almost as though she's just winding up for that final kick up Libby Hill. That has just put a very big target on her back based on that performance. But I've also noticed Dana Wagner has started to wake up a little bit, and she's starting to get a few points across the line and accelerate a bit more forcefully than we've seen earlier in the race. Cassie Baldi, I almost want to urge her to take a bit of a breather in the next sprint and make sure she heads on to Libby Hill with the freshest legs she possibly can, because she's had some really great sprints today, but she has been active in a lot of them. So this is kind of the time for her to sit at the back. But she does that, doesn't she, Nathan? She sprints and then she heads to the back and gets a bit of recovery, which is a bit of a dangerous spot. All right, now this is interesting. Let's take a look at these segment points because it's Luce Addergeist from Aeonian. Now, we saw her last sprint take that win, and she's also got that fastest through segment time, which puts her at the top in terms of points. More interesting, I think, from a perspective of how it's playing out between Socks for Watts and Turbo, is Barrel sitting in second for Turbo. Thorvaldsen, she's sitting in fourth for Turbo. Cindy Freeble, she's snuck in there for Project Beast Mode. We haven't seen a lot of her in the wind, so it's actually quite surprising to see how many points she has up there. And then Cassie Baldi, she's sitting back in fifth. We have noticed her be very active in those sprints, but not registering any time, any points there for the fastest through segment. So she's been getting those points by kind of sitting in and ducking off the wheels. Very different sprint profiles, aren't they? So we may actually have to look at Addergeist for that final kick up Libby Hill. She is clearly, if she's getting the fastest through segment on the third time through, She's clearly got pretty good legs.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking here with Turbo is that they've really solidified themselves here now in this race. They are currently 1 point ahead in the overall standings with 108 versus 107 with Sox Watts. I think that they need to take as many risks as they possibly can, though, today. And this is the main reason being is that next week, Aeonian, as well as Project Beast Mode, I wouldn't count out Cryogen as well. There's a lot of teams here that have an amazing team time trial still. And Sox Watts, I think, are a team that are pretty unstoppable. Well, I shouldn't say unstoppable, but they are known for having an amazing FTP. They're known for having some really, really consistent riders when it comes to just pure power. And so they've got to put as many points on the board and some distance between them and Sox Watts, I think, before the TTT next week. So we were talking a lot about, who's going to win out here today. It does look like Turbo are making it happen today. Now, can they even distance themselves even more from Sox Watts with, maybe a couple Project Beast Mode, Aeonian RT obviously at the top here. Put a team between them and Sox Watts get a two-point lead because they may need that going into a TTT against a team like Sox Watts who have such an amazing time trial ability.
There's definitely going to be next week on their mind as well. It's easy for us to get caught up in week 7 and everything that's happening out, but their team directors will be looking ahead. They'll be looking at the overall points, at all of the different scenarios. They might have a whiteboard like Anna Russell if they're taking themselves seriously. I wonder how Anna's whiteboard is going. It would look pretty hectic by this point in the season, I would imagine. But they will be keeping an eye on that overall. And there's a lot of if this, then that. If Turbo take the points here, what does that mean for us? If they don't, what does that mean for us? If other teams are performing well. So it is very much a moving strategy. It's not that they set it in stone and then go after it and don't change it at all. The strategies have to be very agile. And as do the riders, Nathan, because really often we're looking at the data, we're looking at what it might say on paper, and we're saying these are the riders who might be successful today. These are their peak powers. But that doesn't necessarily mean when push comes to shove that they're in the kind of form where they can put out those powers. So they're now onto this final sprint. And Nathan, again, it's Turbo pushing it at the front. And Adagace, the Aeonian rider who's got that fastest through segment, she's up in the action as well.
And Barrel again, Olivia is just unstoppable in the sprint. She knows the timing over and over again. Beast Mode tries to come over the top, unable to do so. I was seeing it looked like Casibaldi still in the top 5. She is still able to grab some points here for the rest of the team. RCC now coming through maybe with a counterattack. Is that going to be? No, nothing happening there, it looks like. Will we see a counter there coming on through for Sox for Watts? Perhaps not, as they're waiting for a couple of the riders to get back on terms, actually. So maybe put on the back foot a little bit here. Sox Watts, Sheehan, Despas still involved. They have not been dropped. 176 beats per minute, though. And so the heart rate's very high. As we look at Despas off the back here, McKay maybe done her job. She's going to try and hang on at this point. As Helen McKay was involved in that sprint for a top 5 as well. Now, in the men's race, we are just getting out on course for the West 1 Division A. As you can see here, they are out on course. We do have some battles happening with them with dirt. Team Experimental is in there as well. We'll get our leaderboard as things stand across the league here in just a moment. Really, the battle here is going to be Team Torque 2K Callus. Plastic Cockneys are in here. Bike Strong KTM and Team Experimental. A lot of old school Zwifters in there. They're going to be heading into their first sprint in just a moment. We actually might be able to jump in with them and watch that as the ladies are heading on over toward Libby Hill. It's going to calm down for a moment as they rest up and wait for that section out on course.
I like that you say it's going to calm down. There's probably a few of them watching the feed, sending some expletives your way right now, Nathan. But you're right. This is the time for them to regroup and get settled again. A big field here for the gents, 101 riders. Will they get through the next couple of laps with such a big bunch? Based on what we've seen so far, I'd say it is unlikely. But it is really early on. that this first sprint happens. It is actually the great graphic on the top right of screen where you can see that sprint arch, and you think, oh, are they about to sprint for it? In fact, no, they go through, they do that U-turn, and it's out of the U-turn that's where it starts in earnest. So the Plastic Cockneys, they're comfortable at the top of the leaderboard. Team for 2000, Team Tour 2000, pardon me, Kalash, they're also comfortable in second on 110 points. But West Side, and I can't say that without putting my hand in that symbol too, Nathan. I don't know if you're doing that. Lucky we're not on screen. Hurricane aren't too far adrift of them, and the Dynamic Danes. There's still quite a few races happening within. Now that's interesting. Why are all these power-ups being dropped before they've even hit that sprint segment? They are keen beans, this lot.
Yeah, they're really just getting ahead of it, it looks like here. Kim Little, the former UK national champion on the front. This is a rider we've been talking about for the longest round of time here. Will he hang on? Unable to do so. Some of the new blood out on course taking over, it looks like, with Perrin and Gardel, but he holds on for third. Solid result here for Kim Little. Amazing kick from him. One of the longest time as Zwifters. And him and Anna here a little bit, Anna with the headband, but he's going with the
visor.
The visor here coming in from Kim. Loving the look. I think he's had this look for quite a while, and he's on an interesting bike setup here. He's on the Canyon with the 858s and this 859 supers here, and Kim, I think this selection here may have something to do with some of the old school knowledge coming on through. I know him and Casey Shum have really been liking this. Both of them riding for Team Experimental for a long time and have been a part of some of the most old school Zwifters here. So interesting picking up that Canyon with the wheel selection, and solid result for third across the line.
I feel like Anna would slaughter anybody for wearing a visor in this kind of race. But lucky she's not here, Nathan, and we get to be the fashion police instead. I think their headgear is probably the least of their worries as they're out there. This pace is pretty high. Again, we've seen a lot of over 50k an hour pushes through here. They're looking at 33.6 odd kilometres of racing, less than 40 minutes for these guys. There really is no point of recovery. If you're not warmed up and ready to go, Kim Little, 18 holes after the race. Well, good to see he's got a sense of humour, Nathan.
Typing through over on YouTube at 148, keeping it calm. Always the jokes there. Loving it.
With his visor on. I love it.
Absolutely loving it. The women still at a very chill section of the course, about to head downhill. Back in with the men. We do have the start, though, of the West 2 just getting out on course as well for the men. They are just making their way around course. We'll try and jump in with them as well in just a few moments here. As we do have the split screen, though, here between the men and the women. Women heading on down toward the industrial park. All Grupo Compacto, as you can see. And Rachel Elliott, Turbo with Thorvaldsen. Going to eat some super tucks here, getting the heart rates down. Well, 228, 220. I think we've got a little bit of a malfunction there with the heart rate situation there, coming as 230 comes on through.
Either with the data or with her heart, because 230 would certainly be somewhat alarming, wouldn't it, if your heart rate went to that one. We did see a bit of a drop in power there. I'm glad that her avatar didn't disappear when that happened. So that's good, but it does look like that heart rate's still pretty high there for Thorvaldsen, so I hope she's doing okay if that data is accurate.
Yeah, I think most likely, the way that heart rates do read, it is just an electrical signal, and it can get a little bit of interference here and there between the monitor and the skin. I've seen a lot of times, and now it does drop very quickly right on down. I think there might.
That makes me feel more comfortable.
Just a little bit of a quick little electrical interference somewhere, just a misreading, as it does. It is an algorithm that's in the devices that is guessing what might be the heart rate from moment to moment, actually, as it extrapolates out. So there's probably just a little bit of electrical interference there somewhere. So Sheehan now Sox Watts toward the front. Ray Elliott now 4.0. It is going to be Sox Watts and Turbo. Seesaw Race Like a Girl. Have not talked a whole lot about them, as we have Tarquino making her way to the front. Watch out for Ellen in the final. BRT Helkins. You know what's kind of cool is we have had a lot of conversation, obviously, about Turbo, Beast Mode, Sox Watts, but the final across line almost always is amongst those that have not been fighting for, as Dave says a lot, the dog's fighting for a bone. And then, they battle. And then at the end of that fight, somebody comes in and goes, hey, you're all tired out. I'm going to go ahead and sneak away with this.
Yeah, that has been fairly across the board, hasn't it? That we've seen a whole set of names going up Liberty Hill that we haven't seen contesting those intermediate sprints per se. I think that there are some names in this front group that if they don't go well up the climb, we can be surprised. Dana Wagner's probably one of them. Cassie Baldy, she might be carrying a bit of heavy leg fatigue after her efforts in the sprint, but she could certainly go well up there. Luce Addergeist. Now, I know that you just said we tend not to see any of those fighting for the bone earlier in the race going up Libby Hill well, but between her consistency of sprint as well as her fastest through segment, she's definitely one that I'm watching. And can we go past Olivia Barrel, given her timing, given her apparent ease of taking those sprints when she has put her mind to it? She's definitely got to be one to watch. And look, she's sporting a very classy little beret there, Nathan. So I think she's for the win in the fashion stakes tonight with that beret barrel. But that will make it quite easy if you can't see the names and you can't figure out who's on the front. It does make it an easy way to identify her.
She had now 182 beats per minute. She's just trying to make things fast here at this point. Thorvaldsen now looking to set up, it looks like. Now Sheehan making her way to the back of the pack as she stuck her nose in the wind a little bit earlier. There's going to be a left-hand turn, a little bit of an uphill kick. It does take a little sting into the legs and gives riders an opportunity right here to bounce their way forward, though, if they do punch a little bit. Rachel Elliott now 5.7, as you do see from her. Doesn't want to find herself in the front there. Olivia, look at how good Olivia is, though, at finding her spot. It did see the avatar move forward just for a moment and then backed off perfectly to sit right in that second or third wheel. Now it's going to be O'Neill here for the BRT. Elkins there, 129 beats per minute, very low heart rate. Already an aero power-up, though, coming from one of the riders at the back. That is going to be McKay, who I think is struggling just to hang on at this point. Before he even hit the climb here, Kate.
Well, we keep seeing the power-ups get dropped super early. And it's easy to think, they're doing that. What are they doing that for by mistake? But every time it's been that the pace has just been so high once they hit that KOM and they have just gone through that segment time. We know that it gets really tough here. Even though on screen it looks fairly shallow, it's actually up around the 7% mark in a tick. When they do turn left onto those cobbles, that is where you need to be in the top 10 now. For riders not in the top 10, they will struggle once they do take that left-hand turn. Barrel is on the edge of that top 10. She needs to start sneaking up. Cassie Baldy, great positioning from her. That is brilliant. And Tammy Miller, the young under-23 we touched on earlier, with a whole lot of talent in her bucket. She is throwing it down. This is a great move from the youngster. She needs to get out of her seat now, though, go into that orange, because this is where it's happening. And Barrel on the move, Nathan. Look at her go. Look at this acceleration. She makes it look like they've barely even warmed up. What Olivia, an incredible sprint this is.
She's gone. She's just absolutely gone here. 537 watts here at this point. Olivia Barrow just walks away with this one. Miller with the early attack is able to hold on. Adagest here. Ionian Wagner from Beast Mode going to be coming in through for third. Massey, Thorvaldsen. Where's Sox for Watts? Just uninvolved, it looks like, really in this sprint at all. This is going to be that TTT. They're going to have to really put all of their chips into that. I mean, at this point, it's going to have to be all in, because Turbo just kind of walked away with this one this week, it looks like.
We get fairly invested in the riders and the teams, right? It's not that we have our biases and our favourites, but we certainly get very invested in the journeys. And the tone in your voice there, Nathan, where's Sox for Watts? It felt quite despondent. Barrel, that was just, we almost saw that coming. Literally 30 seconds before she did that, we said, is she beatable? Tammy Miller, she threw it down at the beginning. I'm impressed. I really think that she is a rider that should have a very big circle around her name from any of these teams that may be headhunting for the next season, because she is an absolute catch. She will keep going.
Look at the
Well, it's
timing,
funny to
Kate.
watch them race backwards down, isn't it? But when Barrel hit over the top of Tammy Miller, there was no looking back. She's at over 11 watts per kg and not slowing down.
Perfect timing too on the feather power up, taking speed with the feather power up into the steepest part. I mean, I want to just, for anybody watching for the races later in Americas or just how to hit Libby Hill, I'm just going to show this one more time here, because a lot of times people will think hit it at the 12, but instead she hit it at this 6.56 and gained speed up to 38, 39. It continued through the 14%, carried speed, and allowed her to even have extra speed and be more lightweight through that next section and extend her lead. It's all about speed. It's not necessarily just about watts per kilogram at the right timings. She ends up with 2 seconds over the rest of the field because of it. Perfect timing here. We talked about it in the sprints as well. We saw her over and over again when it came to timing, taking those down. Miller, as you said, this is a talent to be watching out for the future. Comes across the line there in second. Beast Mode fourth. They're only for third. Solid ride for them. Massey, Thorvaldsen, all over the front end of this race. Turbo, they're showing that they really want it when it comes down to the situation for the Premier Division and battling out with the reality of Project Beast Mode in the playoffs. They're going to have a lot more to deal with, though, when it comes to the rest of the teams, because there's a lot of them wanting to get into that Premier Division at the top end of the racing here. So this is the EMEA, and they're showing to be the top two teams. Now, it's not settled at this point. Sox Schwartz, they still have a chance. But Turbo, I think, at this point have really shown that they're going to be very difficult to beat for those that second spot against Beast Mode.
Oh, Turbo, certainly based on what they did today. And not only will look to be going through to challenge for that Premier League spot, but it also looks to me like they are just really building to a bit of a crescendo in this season. And the real nuance of the timing on that final climb by Barrel, where you hit the nail on the head, Nathan, it's not enough to try and accelerate through that 14% section, and it's the second last corner. You can't attack out of that second last corner. You have to attack into it and carry that speed into that really steep section. That is a good lesson for these guys who are now coming into their third sprint, I think it'll be, or it could be second. We'll have to check on that, because that timing, it's as though through APAC and through these EMEA leagues, we've really managed to nail down that timing. The power-ups are being dropped, Nathan. This is where the sprint happens in earnest, and there's some big watts being put down.
Podsy, Mahi Podsaline here. Team Experimental all over the front. 1, 2, 3. Podsaline, Herod, and Kim Little all taking down the best of the points. That might have been fastest across for the segment as well. That was absolutely amazing from Podsy coming from the back. A lot of times when they come from the back of the pack to that final 200 to 300 meters there, the rider, a lot of times, because of it starting from the sprint section and pulling all the way through at the top speed, will get the fastest segment time. I would not be surprised if Podsaline made that happen. Great lead out from his teammates. 1, 2, 3 Team Experimental have shown up on the day. And, I think this may be their, it's kind of cool to see West Side here, 99 points. I have a feeling they're hoping that maybe they had a few more races like this where they had sprint point situations, a lot more. They're really great in the TTT. They just haven't been able to make it happen when it came to the punchier races up against the likes of Tortuque Callis as well as Plastic Cockneys, as they do have a pretty good buffer over the top of Team X West Side. But they're showing up in this last couple of weeks with some solid efforts.
This course is really bringing out kind of the sassy of riders that are prepared to really have a go and give it a crack. It's also giving them the opportunity to try something on one sprint. If it doesn't work, they can either try again or mix it up for the next lap. And to me, it's a bit more exciting and more dynamic than some of the other courses where they've almost been a little bit intimidated by the climbs to come. This is being one of my favourite so far, and a finish on a classic hill like Libby Hill. Of course, there's a lot of romance in that as well. I think that's a beautiful way to finish this kind of race. But they do have a very big bunch still, which is good. That's a good chance for them to recover after they do make those big sprint efforts. But a big team effort from Team Experimental, Nathan. It's to do a good lead out like that. Podsaline was obviously able to finish it off with quite a lot of style and pizzazz. They don't want to burn too many matches though early on, but they are. I feel like they're smoothing out that lead out, and if they can get him into a position and so that he can jump over the top of them coming into that second to last corner up Libby Hill, that is where the team could really come in handy and be. It wouldn't be a secret weapon. I think everybody knows what's going on, but certainly a weapon.
Yeah, and Podzy, I think he's been a long time sprinter and rider out on Zwift. He's going to be one to watch out for because of his prowess. I mean, the entirety of Team Experimental Westside, this being one of the longest standing courses, they're going to be very familiar with this course. So that is going to give them a huge advantage, I think, coming into each one of these sprints. You've seen it over and over again. You had a question going into that 180-degree turn. Why are they opening up so early? What's going on here? But it's the timing around there that I think these riders are just absolutely used to. I think they're going to know Libby Hill very well and how to ride it. Podsy now on the attack, actually, into this false flat. A couple of now there's a lot of feather power-ups being used here. And you know why that's being used here at this point? It is the point of the course where you get the most out of it on this section. If you're a rider who's not that interested in the sprint, you're just supposed to hang on. You use it on this little uphill gradient. It reserves a little bit of energy. The whole pack comes right back on together. Podsy gets shut right on down, regardless of any attacks he does have on the front. So a lot of feather power-ups being used on the only uphill section or the flat sections of the Richmond course.
With such a big bunch, it would be a very tough ask for any break to stay away. That'll change the dynamics because less teams are likely to even go after that kind of strategy. It does make it very on again, off again when they do sprint at such high powers and high speeds for those intermediates, and then they back it off a little bit. That can actually hurt the legs quite a lot going into Libby Hill. Sometimes, Nathan, we see some riders sitting back and looking after themselves early on in the race, and we think, gee, they might really be up for a big finish here because they haven't been too active and wasted too much energy in those intermediate sprints. But often with this kind of on again, off again dynamic race, by the time they do go to accelerate and use that power, their legs just don't really feel it. They don't really have it. And I think the names that we're seeing in that top 10, but not necessarily the one or two, with the exception of Olivia Barrel, in all of the other divisions, those winners are coming from that top 10. So they're up there and they are definitely stretching themselves. They're just not overextending by trying to take the win.
Looking at Podsy here now as we do see 4.8 watts per kilogram coming from him. Just sitting in, getting a little bit of recovery. As you can see, Tortuque Callis here. They're going to be the second overall in the series right now. Plastic Cockneys, that's going to be in the black and yellow kits. One of the things that is on the line for the Premier Division are in-game kits. So a lot of times there are questions comes on through from a lot of the esports teams that are out there in the community. How do you get your kit in game? How do we get our kit in game? One of the ways that you can do it is by winning entry into the Premier Division. The top 3 teams from the playoffs will be going into that. The top 2 teams from this league here that we are watching right now, this region, will be going up as well specifically in this division. There are 14 men's teams across the board that will be making it into those playoffs, and the top 3 from them in those playoffs will be earning in-game kits. And I think the Plastic Cockneys are looking for that as they're sharing the same kit with another team out there today as Kim Little again. Oh my goodness, that's the 3rd sprint through. Second one he takes down, and that might be, we're gonna have to wait and see here if that's a new fastest segment here. I'm gonna try and get the fastest segment updated here, because if we look at first across the line. We've got a good amount of points coming on through, but the fastest segment time so far is going to be the SZ rider, actually, with Hart coming down through for that second. Thomas Perrin there for that third. So I'm surprised Kim Little here. We may get an update in just a moment, though, as these are not completely up to date segment points here at this point. But Kim Little's been coming through pretty fast, and I'm a little surprised that not able to grab that. But again, first time through, a lot of times those first couple of times through, the pack is just absolutely flying and really fighting for it. And that speed, it really can snowball on top of each other. Joachim Plusmer's off the back. This is an FTP rider that's got a solid, high, steady power. I think he's going to get back on terms, though, it looks like. Not your sprinter type, that's for sure.
Now, Kim Little also right down the back, so he needs to scooch his way forward a little bit there to make sure no little gaps open up in front. He's just warming up in those sprints. He'd be a good one for Libby Hill, but he does need to save a little bit of energy. I do think we do need to update those segment points to get a bit of an idea, because Podsy, there he is in fifth. It's hard for an Australian mouth to say Podsy. It doesn't come out very well. You make it sound so easy, Nathan. But he is sitting there in fifth. So he did a decent through segment time as well as a decent over the line there as well. But the sheer volume of these sprints ends up painting quite an interesting picture. And Nick Hart, we haven't even mentioned him too much. He got some points while we were actually watching the finish of the women's race. But he's sitting pretty up the top there on 40 points, which is very significant. Gardell's sitting in second on 34 points, and they've both done it in different ways with those first over the line and fastest through segment. But Kim Little, now that that's been updated, he has moved up into third, so he's probably been the most seen rider on that sprint board. Again, sometimes what you're seeing on screen and the results going across, they don't seem to marry up, and that is because of that fastest through segment, those massive bonus points, because that is Hart and Gardell. If you remove that fastest through segment, it is Kim Little who has been the most prolific in scoring points in a first over the line basis.
Looking here real quickly, Team Tour 2000 Callis not super involved in the points so far, interestingly enough. We do go back to the preems and get an idea of how that's playing out here. It really is where are they? I mean, it's only Charlie Revel really with 8 points at the bottom. And with so many teams in between, Plastic Cockneys, SZ, SDW, there may be a little bit of risk. And look at how many points Team Experimental are racking up here. They're probably the leaders on the board at this point, as Zach Herod with 10, Joachim Plusmer's there with 14. We're looking at Podsy there at 20. We're seeing Kim Little there at 26. Plastic Cockneys, they do have, it looks like, Tom Wiley as well. I believe maybe Milk is going to be right after, and then Perrin there at 24. But I do believe currently Team Experimental, the leaders on the day. Going to be a tough ask here, perhaps, especially with the experience that we've been talking about. I think Podzeline here was resting up perhaps for this next time through. They are going to be looking forward to Libby Hill if after this sprint and the reality of what it seems they're bringing to the line so far, Team Experimental, with this overall current standings as well. I don't know if it's possible, though. Plastic Cockneys, not Plastic Cockneys, but the other teams out here with Tour 2000 Callis, they're going to have a really bad day on the day, because it is a solid 11-point difference. We've seen it happen before, but they would have to be pretty far down the leaderboard, and Team Experimental take the win today and a win on the TTT next week. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the chances are very slim.
Yeah, well, it becomes a lot of things have to happen for that to play out. So the odds are not good. Yes, it is possible, but as you fairly mentioned, there's a big difference between possible and likely. It's a much smaller group, Nathan. It has whittled down. They started with 101, but we have shrunk that a fair bit. We've That's something that we've noticed this course really tends to do. And if you're only watching the front of the bunch, you wouldn't even notice because it just looks like there's a big spread out blobbed bunch across the road. But actually, when you get down the back, like we're looking at now, you notice that bit by bit, people are coming on back on one, two at a time because it has strung out. There are little groups that are left chasing, and even if it's a gap of 1, 2, 3 seconds, it all makes a difference. So they'll go into this U-turn, they'll drop those power ups, head into that sprint line. This is the final sprint before they do head out to Libby Hill. This is the last chance for them to get some points and maybe challenge that segment time. The power ups start getting dropped. Where is Kim Little, Nathan? Who will be the antagonist today?
Yeah, interesting enough, Zach Harrod's sitting in, not really that interested. I was staying on him because I thought perhaps there was going to be a move from him, but at the front end, it is going to be Nick Hart again. Amos there as well. Actually, Kim Little taking. It looks like Kim is just unstoppable today. Across the line, first place. I mean this has been an absolutely um, dominating performance here coming on through from Kim Little. I'm blown away. And, a month and a half ago or so, I saw Kim, a couple of messages come on through in the first week, even, oh, well, we're ramping up. I'm starting to get on it again. Got a couple of DM, private messages, DMs from him saying he's starting to train again a little bit here. And look at it paying off into the 7th week now as he seems to be back on form and dominating in the world of Zwift again. Again, this is a former UK national champion of Zwift, has earned that kit in game in previous years. He's been a competitor to the point that he's showed up to so many of the in real life events for qualifying for them in the arena events as well. So be on the watch out. Team Experimental, it looks like, on the rise again to try and take down the world of Zwift Racing League.
He's certainly been a very consistent face out there today. And he's just warming up for his 18 holes on the golf course later with that little cap on his head. Libby Hill would definitely suit him and his strengths, but he's put a lot out in these intermediate sprints. So time will tell whether or not he still has the legs to do that. It looks like Kalash, the Tour 2K, is starting to move up. They've been fairly inactive thus far in these intermediate sprints, which has been quite interesting. But perhaps they are just now positioning for that final run in. It is about 34 kilometres in total. The last 800 meters odd is when it is actually the steepest and hardest section. So it's not too long a climb. It's definitely not out of reach for the power and sprinters, but it's more the accumulation of the intermediate sprints that's been doing the damage. But they will get a bit of a flat run in here and then a little bit of a descent. Let them get a little bit of recovery before it is very much the business end of the race.
It does look like we do have Navy Cycling up toward the front now. 427 watts real quickly here from Revel, looking to set up. 42K Callus, this is the second overall. Team Italy now, it looks like also trying to take over the front. Dirt Wolfpack. Been pretty quiet so far. Always loving the dirt kits though, for sure. WTRL, it looks like now moving forward. Another race that is currently going on is going to be the West 2, EMEA West 2 A1s. There's quite a battle happening over there as well with OVB, Socks for Watch, Cryogen, Restart is in there, as well as Fusion Dev, Skylab with the likes of Caleb Carl, as well as the CMI UCI team. That was the Simon actually Green who is giving a little bit of shout out to his team. That is going to be the team that he's most likely watching. We'll try and jump on over there for a look at how things are playing out with that Skylab team, as well as the OVB and the battle that's happening there between all of them for that top spot in the West 2, as we look to get those images up on screen. Long day here, Kate. Very early morning for Kate here as well, as we really appreciate the commentary coming on through. What time do you get up, Kate, for this one? Is it a 4 a.m., 4:30?
Yeah, it's a 4 a.m. of this one. Which isn't too bad. I've actually seen a couple of Aussies out there in some of the earlier races. So I think as long as they're not in Queensland, we were talking off air about the nuances of the different time zones and daylight savings and how it can affect your planning for the rest of the season. And I said that this is quite a lovely time zone for the Europeans, but somebody's actually commented on the YouTube to let me know that it's actually quite late there. So just goes to show it's pretty hard to keep up with all the different time zones, isn't it?
Navy cycling, a little bit of kick off the front, maybe some confusion that we saw also in the APAC with beast mode as they did try and go for some sprint points that were not existent. It was only on Monument, not on Broad Street, that there were any points up for grabs. It does cause the pack to surge a little bit of elastic snap, but as you can see, Skyrocket and some of the others here just sitting in, not really too concerned about it, as they do know that the descent down into the industrial park does have a ton of speed and some snowball effect. As long as you don't find yourself with any kind of gap, you can just sit in. 182 beats per minute here coming from the Navy cycling rider. Maybe he was just looking for the kudos on the leaderboard, though, rather than any kind of points.
Yeah, sometimes it's like TV time, right? You want to get your name and your sponsors out there, and I applaud that. That's not a bad way to do it rather than be anonymous for the entire day. So now look at that. That's a good screenshot of what's happened so far with the points. Kim Little, he is on the top of the table. That won't be a surprise to anyone. What is a slight surprise, though, is that he's not further up in that fastest through segment. And it kind of goes to show the savvy behind the sprinting and how you can get that many points without actually having to lay it out and go the fastest segment time. So definitely different strategies. Nick Hart remains in second. David Gardell, he does have that fastest through segment in third. Now, Gardell, we haven't seen him in the second half of the race at all. Is he sitting back perhaps, Nathan, and readying the legs for the finish? Because he's clearly got good legs if he's got that fastest segment. But it is interesting that he chose to get all those points in the first couple and has been sitting back and looking after himself. So I think he might be somebody to really watch, certainly going into that second to last corner on Libby.
One thing I definitely want to pay attention to as well is the reality of Tour 2000 here. Tour 2K, they have been very quiet. I am seeing only Charlie Revel, but I am seeing lots of them in the middle of the pack here at this point. I'd be on the watch out for some sort of crazy full gas trying to stack the podium here coming from them into the final now. Team Experimental have shown themselves to be very dominant in the sprints. Have they burned all the matches, though, that they have in order to try and take the day? Or, and also Plastic Cockneys, they're going to be out here. They've been the dominant team. Is it their tactic here to wait until that final kick over the top of Libby Hill in just a moment? We'll have to wait and see. We are heading along the river here at this point. Rickson off the front here. Not going to be going anywhere, it looks like, as we do have KWCC now taking over toward the front. Tour 2K there in the blue. That is their kit. Be on the watch out for that kit. Kim Little looking to follow it up, it looks like. Here's this is going to be CB here now in the WSR kit, the World Social Ride. This is the kit that Tour 2K is using for now. Kim now takes over. Now overtaken by the Plastic Cockneys. DZR to the front. Lots of positioning, lots of jockeying, as you can find yourself very quickly at the back with the kind of speeds and the power that they're putting out to try and find the front of this group right now.
There is a lot of jostling for position happening. Kim Little, he's a lot further up at this point than I would have thought he necessarily needed to be, which just shows a bit of confidence, actually, and comfort that he wants to be near the front, and he can so easily do so. He's definitely been the rider today to watch, the one that has really put a lot of confidence out there to say that he is in good form. And it has, as you say, it has been good to watch that develop through the season. It is quite a long season in the 8 weeks to hold form, so a lot of them come in a little bit underdone and just build on it. They're coming up now to this U-turn. It won't be long then before they head right onto the cobbles of Libby Hill. This is where, if they're not in the top 10, Nathan, they're too far back. I think we'll be looking at our winner in this screen here. If they're not on the screen, they're certainly going to have a very difficult position trying to move up.
Miller now 6.2 watts per kilogram coming from him. Geez, the rider I haven't seen a whole lot from at this point now, making his way to the front. Now, Kim, is this a lead out here coming from Little? Perhaps there's not a whole lot left in the tank here from him, and he's going to be trying to set up the likes of Zach Harrod. We have seen that Mikey Podsline has not been toward the front end of the race very much at all or involved in the other sprints. I am seeing Joachim Plusberg on the left-hand side there from Team Experimental, but Tor 2K Calisday were not involved in many of the sprints at all, and a lot of blue making the way to the front. Here comes Kim. Early attack from him, an arrow power up. Interesting enough, he's forcing some of the other riders out from the group at this point. Miller goes 12 watts per kilogram. Here is the first real attack.
Well, Miller goes, he drops that power up. He is absolutely belting away. This gap is opening up massively. He's the only one in double digits up the front there. It does look like this might be a bit of an unassailable lead here. That was it was not by design, I don't think, but Little almost gave Miller the perfect lead out. We've talked about Tor 2K Kalash. Were they in the bike race? They've been pretty quiet so far. They needed to step up. Nathan Miller has taken that message, and boy, has he delivered.
Yeah, Zach Harrod, it looks like, able to walk away with this second place here, but it was Miller across the line. That was the move. Bottom to top, you don't usually see it, but it was perfectly timed, actually, coming from that rider here. This is the chase group here, but let's take a quick look back at that initial attack here from Miller in just a moment. That was actually extremely impressive move coming from him, and we've seen it earlier from Eddie Uli. He was able to make it happen as well with a very similar type of attack. I want to look at the positioning of Miller and the way that he attacked from the group, the way that he was able to gain the kind of speed that he did. I think he may have just caught them off guard a little bit. Or maybe just pure power when it comes down to it. I mean, we look at the music there is not exactly what we were looking for. Actually, they're coming on through, but we're not starting the broadcast again, everybody. That was we
need coffee. I'm sure you do too.
We definitely need some coffee. But looking here, it does look like that attack here coming from Miller, 12 watts per kilogram, 183, and just gone. I mean, there was no response that could have done much about it. He did fade at the back end of it. They may have trusted that it was going to come back, as Harrod did not follow. We do see Zach Harrod there with a 12 watt per kilogram attack, but trying to come across too little too late, and without any kind of power-ups to follow it up there. Miller, Tor 2K, able to throw down. We'll have to wait and see how this ends up playing out. We're seeing a lot of Tor 2K, as I did say earlier, in that top 10. You do see that Beak, Gray, Revel. I think they were waiting for this. I think this is what it was all about for them, was just wait until this moment to, try and make sure that they solidify their spot second overall through points across the line, rather than from the points when it comes to the sprint sections.
There seems to be a bit of a formulaic approach up Libby Hill that has evolved since the first race last night in APAC. Tonight we've seen quite an evolution again, and that is tending toward the going longer, going earlier. Last night it was that last corner where all the action was happening, but now it's certainly, once they hit the cobbles, you can assume that is absolutely all on there. So this is now the lead-in for these guys into Libby Hill. This descent is where they all get to regroup a little bit. Some of them take the power tuck to really get that heart rate down and calm down a little bit, because there is absolutely no denying it. This has got to be one of the most brutal final kilometres of any of the races out there, Nathan, and it is producing some incredible rides.
Yeah, it is. And we are looking here at the West 2 Division 1 A's here for the riders at this point. Skylab, I believe, are going to be the riders that we're going to be watching out for here. As well as, if I take a look, it's going to be Skylab at 115, OVB, BRT Thunder, and SZ Herma. Those are going to be the main teams to be watching out for. That's your top four. Restart Up Nation at 101 in fifth place currently. So a little bit of a battle for Second place overall between OVB and BRT Thunder. So those are going to be the teams to be watching out for across the line. BRT here with Yardley, as well as, let's see, is that going to be actually Simon Richardson in racing in and amongst this group right now with the GCN crowd? If I'm not incorrect, I think GCN have actually jumped into this race here.
Oh, that's unreal to see the support that those guys are showing for Zwift.
This
They've
is
been
Simon
pretty active in the
Richardson.
Zwift
This
world,
is Cy
actually.
for sure. This is definitely
that's
Cy
unreal.
jumping amongst. I don't know if he's got a team or if he just jumped on into the race here.
Well, he's put some Ks out in the Zwift world. He knows the ins and outs, and he's managed to do some fabulous videos to try and explain it too. It's actually good to reference and look up because it shows you exactly how difficult it is to hold a conversation or function while belting your way through the Zwift world. There isn't a GCN on the board there, so perhaps he is out there on his own. Nathan, bit of a lonely day, but he's doing well sitting up there just following the wheels. So there's a look at this battle going on between OVB, BRT Thunder, Hermod, and Restart Up Nation. Certainly, and we've seen this across the boards, today really counts. The team time trial next week won't sort it all out. So very valuable points to be had at the finish here.
Yeah, we do see Fitzpatrick here. It's going to be Skylab CMI UCI here, who he's also racing for. It's going to be earlier today in the APAC region with Simon Green. Very dominant rider. It's going to be his teammate in real life. Riding for Skylab, though, here in the West Division 1A. It is going to be Skylab dominating so far. We'll see if they can continue on across the line. I want to give a shout out though also to Sai. He knows this course really well. When this course first released, actually, there was a great, race that GCN put on in conjunction with Zwift. It was one of the first things I actually ever streamed on my Twitch channel, actually, and one of the first things that was streamed as well by GCN. So really cool to see Sai jumping back in here. He knows this climb well, and he actually won that race and amongst some of the favorites here. So we'll see how he ends up playing and maybe stealing a few points out there today amongst the riders. We'll have to wait and see. But now to the front, it's going to be Team Type 1 with an aero power up and making things difficult before the climb. This is maybe more of a setup than anything, or just hanging out at 184 beats per minute currently for Odell.
We've been surprised how early some of the power-ups have been dropped because we know how valuable they can be on that final run-in with the cobbles. If you are still able to hang on to that, a little bit of a masterclass in that last sprint that we saw around the timing of not only the sprint but also the drop of the power up. Carl, he races a lot across a heap of divisions, so he's one of our stalwarts here in the Zwift Community League racing. I think we'll see him a bit later on again today, so that's great to see him still in there. There's still a pretty big bunch, but they are about to take this right-hander. They'll be on the cobbles. And then, Nathan, there's no looking back.
No, there is a little bit of an attack here. Not that 12 watts per kilogram that we saw in the West 1. So it's not going to be a breakaway situation here at this point. Walters goes, though, at that 10 watts per kilogram, a 10% grade there. Brinkley trying to come over the top there. Restart here with maybe the win. Brandlin coming across at 14 watts per kilogram. That's going to be some serious speed picking up. Will Walters be able to hang on to it? It looks like he's going to do it to the line just barely, maybe. No! Walters, Brinkley, Brandlin, followed up by Sherrod there from OVB. And then English, Caleb Carl for fifth, I believe, from Skylab. Skylab with Burnett. Fitzpatrick there, going across the line in fourth, fifth, and sixth. See if we can get a replay here of all of that, as that was some very fast. The action comes so crazy quickly here across the line, Kate. It's so fast. The speeds over the top of Libby Hill are just insane.
It did not look like Walters was going to be able to hang on to that. And then it did not look like Brinkley would hang on to second, but he sprinted all the way to the line. Brandlin ending up third, but Walters just hung on. I think he must have been really throwing it all out there in that final 100 meters because it looked like those guys were coming at him very quick. But once again, that timing, Nathan, he timed it perfectly. He dropped his power up, he accelerated before that second to last corner, which seems to be the real hot spot, and he pulled it off. They just weren't able to bring it back. They did get close, but timing is everything, and what a ride from Walters.
Definitely amazing ride coming on through there. We're going to see if we can jump on in with some of the results. I know a lot of people are wondering what's happening in the women's race here. And then we'll see if we can catch some of the finishes for the B, C, D category across these West 1s and 2s. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here at how things played out across the line for the women's results. And again, it was the mastermind of Turbo and Olivia Barrow dominating here in the EMEA West 1 Division 1A.
Oh, that was just an incredible show of power the whole day from Barrow. The young upstart Tammy Miller, she had a great ride there in second. Luce Addergeist, she took third. She also took fastest segment, so she had a great day. Dana Wagner from the Beast Mode crew in fourth. Laura Massey in fifth. Leah Torvalson, she had a great day, almost pushing up there at the finish in sixth. Melissa Denman in seventh. Maya Winterbrandt coming in eighth. Cindy Freeble in ninth. And Cassie Boldy, she hung on to 10th after using a lot of energy in those intermediate sprints, but a big day from her as well.
And interesting enough, one thing I definitely want to point out here, and I mean, Rachel Elliott, a dominating force when it comes to just making the race a race of attrition and very difficult for the rest of the riders, but not the punchiest of riders. So definitely having to rely on some of the other, team members here. Cassie Baldy, really the only one that we're seeing there from Saksha Watts. So they're going to have their work cut out for them again, as we did say earlier, in that TTT next week. But that is where they're going to shine most likely. Here, women's EMEA West 1 Division 1B here with Michelle McKinney, followed up by Lucy Driver. And it's going to be Kristen Lipscomb coming on through for third, Sarah Mack for fourth, Terry Freemanure there in fifth. It's going to be Julie Shaley there in sixth. It's going to be Kat Forrest there in seventh, Carice Blowers in eighth, Kat Haynes in ninth, and Juliet Elliott there rounding out your top 10. Great to see YouTube talent jumping on into the B category for the women's EMEA West 1.
Well, we saw her last week. Great to have her back again this week. Henriette Melsom took the win in the Division C here. Helen Kohlberg in second. Mandy Poole for third. Kerry Archer for fourth. Lucy Cosgrove, she took fifth. And again, these are all pretty tight sprint finishes here. Helen Thomas for sixth. Kelty Trannell for seventh. Grace O for eighth. Lena Nace in ninth, and C. Scott rounded out that top 10.
And then for the D category in the women's EMEA West 1 Division 1, it's Maggie Shearer coming on through for first, Jess Verstegen in second there, Donna Louise Pope in third, Emma McLean in fourth, Diane Clayton Chisholm in fifth, Christine M in sixth, Rick Weiss in seventh, Michelle East coming through for eighth, Rach Thorogood in ninth, and Ellie G rounds out the top 10. Now we can go ahead and jump on in. We are able to catch, it's a very fast course out there, everybody. So we've been doing our absolute best to get across the categories as much as we possibly can. We will be able to catch the back end of the D category here for the West 1 and West 2. Kay Old here from the Herd, as well as Dunker and Dowdle now making their way to the line. This is the front end, I believe. Yep, this is going to be the front end with Team NL here. The Netherlands now being well represented, 170 beats per minute in this D category. The rest of the categories have finished for the men's results. Again, everybody, we will be taking a look at the results as best we can at the end of the broadcast, but then you can head over to WTRL.racing for a full lineup of all the results as well as the standings after the broadcast. Heading into the final of Libby Hill here for this West 1 for the D division. Jay Payton, I think this is a very familiar name, actually, Payton here for the TFC. Longtime viewer, actually, trying to hang on, but now the attack is off the front with the Netherlands and Scotland. Now, Zwift Scotland with Howison now with that drafting power up on the front. Interesting enough, maybe he used it while he's sitting on a wheel.
Well, this is the really tough part. I mean, I think you've got to throw out any power up you have at this point. And Howison, he is riding from the front. That has proven to be a tried, tested, and successful tactic so far. But it is always that danger of, can you hang on? It is this right-hander coming up that is when they're on the cobbles there. And Howison, he has fallen victim to a power-up with McGuigan dropping that right at the perfect time to gain that advantage. He will go onto the cobbles with a solid 2-second lead, which opened up pretty quickly. And Toscu is in hot pursuit, but this is like a slow motion race where the gaps are just not closing down quickly. Kerr over the top here of McGuigan. He's got to hold on to this wheel. This is where they really need to build the speed as it gets to that steep section.
Loving the back and forth here on these climbs here. It's like haymakers, 1, 2, and then it's like, oh, is it enough? Not quite. Oh, back over the top over and over again. Wigan here now with a second kick here, 4.9, 4.8, 199 beats per minute. And these are those moments here where it's absolute pain to the line right now. Kerr now trying to come across. Oh, and we lost snow. For some reason, we're losing the images here. Here we go. Back in with Kerr. McGuigan. Kerr Abe's able to hold on here. And then it's going to be Antos. I'm going to try this one. And Toscu. Across the line there, followed up by Lister.
But I love being helped out with the phonetics there if anybody wants to jump in.
I mean, I think I did an okay job on that one. Not bad material.
Yeah, I mean, better than Kookaburra.
Oh, shots fired. Kookaburra. Kookaburra.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that one.
Oh, man. Oh. Ooh, 205 beats per minute coming from that D category. I mean, that was some high heart rates. Oh, my goodness. Amazing result there for those D category riders. It is a mixed field. We do have Alfonso actually from two guys coming to the line as well in that. I'm going to come back to that sprint, actually. We'll go back to that other D category. That was the West D category. But I do like to highlight that in the ZRL, and this is a great point that we do see, currently in 16th place, fighting for 2 guys in the mixed category, where the women can jump in with the men and battle it out at the similar fitness and ability levels, which I absolutely love about the ZRL.
Yeah, I think that's unreal too. So this is the first season we've had that. So it's not just men's, but it's also men's and mixed teams. And we have seen quite a few, and we've seen some of the ladies step up and have some great results. So good to see Afonso here representing the ladies in that mixed team. It also offers a lot of the smaller teams, Nathan, a good opportunity to still field a team and get out there rather than having to sit on the sidelines because they are a mixed gender team. So I think it's a great initiative.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. This will be the final category that we are going to cover here on broadcast. I am seeing the questions coming on through. We do try and cover as many as we possibly can and across all of the categories with the images that we can get. It can be a little bit of a challenge at times to get across to every single one of the categories and find them out on course. There are thousands upon thousands of riders during this region, and we set up as best we can to get across all of them. But we are going to be able to cover this final West 2 Division D1, as it is going to be Electric Spirit hammering away with Kemp. Monkey from WLRCC. James is there as well. A little bit of a breakaway situation. They do have a 1:18-minute gap, so they are not going to be caught. 7 riders in total heading into Libby Hill for this battle. We'll see if we can get some of the standings as well, as we have a little time to find those up on screen to give you an idea of what the setup is and what's on the line for this sprint.
This is definitely one of the more difficult finishes in the Zwift world, whether you are riding it for a recon or whether you are in a bunch. But a smaller bunch is that little bit tougher because you don't get that recovery or that ease in that roll into the hill. There's absolutely nothing about the roll into the hill in this case. A small group of 6 challenging it. The timing remains the same though, Nathan. If you don't hit out and have speed going into that second to last corner, when it does tick up over that 14 toward 20% for a single moment if you catch it on screen, then it is an absolute slog. And that is something that we have seen no matter the division, no matter the geography. Libby Hill seems to really bite everybody at that spot when they're on the cobbles.
Interesting here. I'm wondering where the endangered rhinos are on this. I have Gardner for rhino, LW for rhino, Poulter for rhino, but WLRCC having a really good ride out here today, making is that going to be 3 riders in the lead group here with Monkey, Poitner, and James? So big little jump, a big jump for them in the points overall, perhaps. Now, not going to be too much of a deciding factor, though, most likely at 104 points versus what the Rhinos have with 112 currently. So Rhinos don't have to be too worried. But on the day, solid result here coming for WLRCC. If they can sweep the podium, even it is an opportunity at this point. Electric Spirit, though, having it looks like which kit is Electric Spirit rolling in? It looks like it is going to be the orange kits that they are with Kemp, as well as Viney, and then it's going to be the who are they up against here? Is this going to be the yellow and black with pink? KVBB is who it's going to be. Pink not having KVBB in the name there. They are going to be the 4th place overall currently in this division.
At this point in the season, it's also a really interesting dynamic to think that they might all individually just want to try different strategies, try out their racecraft, because for the next season, these are similar scenarios they'll find themselves in, and as they progress. And I think the D category is a really interesting mix of people who have been around for a while but are perhaps a little bit older and don't have a lot of time necessarily to spend all the hours on Zwift they want, but they still love racing, as well as some really young, new riders who are just stepping into the racing world for the first time, who are on slightly different trajectories. So every week we're given quite a dynamic race and result because of that, because people never quite know what to expect from their competitors, which I love. I think that that's a really interesting one. But it doesn't matter whether you've been riding for 20 years or whether you've been riding for 20 months. Libby Hill is a nasty mistress, and it is about to bite as they hang this right-hand corner. They're onto the cobbles. It's time for the power-ups, fellas. This is your chance.
Real quickly here, I am getting an update. Earlier, we did say Cy Richardson was just jumping into the race here, but actually it looks like, which is really great, the Bolt Racing team picked up Richardson. So he was riding for BRT in the race, which is absolutely awesome to see a GNC talent jumping in and amongst the racers and a part of a community team. Absolutely loving it. Very cool to see. Now into the sprint, though, as we do see here, Electric Spirit Company now on the attack, trying to come over the top of Williams from KVBB. 5.0 watts per kilogram coming from him to try and hold on to the Electric Spirit Company rider. That is going to be Viney. The race of attrition to the line. Williams, 5.5 watts per kilogram over the top. 174 beats per minute right now coming from Viney, trying to hang on. The left hook, the right hook on the ropes. And it looks like it's going to be a knockout, most likely. Yep, Williams able to hold on. A little bit of a sprint kick. Not for a second. He was going to have another upset, and Viney was going to come around. Not going to happen. Pink, the teammate, looking to hold on, but WLRCC maybe grab a podium? No! It's going to be Pink across the line with Poitner, followed up by Kemp. No! Other way around, I think Kemp did nip it at the line there. That was the D
it's such a slog to the finish, isn't it? You can't afford to sit up a single centimetre before you cross the line, because that is absolute danger time. But everybody is at their absolute limit. It is such a tough climb up to the finish there.
It definitely is. Now, we do have the results are going to be coming up here in just a moment for the men's EMEA West Division 1. We'll jump on in there and take a look at how things played out with Miller and the rest of the field. We'll get as many of the results as we possibly can, but if we do not show the results you're specifically looking at, I know that the East are probably like, hey, what happened with our results? Or maybe something we were looking for the rest of the West and they don't show up. You can always head on over to WTRL.racing. But let's take a look at how things played out. That attack from Ben Miller Kate was absolutely flying and pulled off something similar to Eddie Uli. And, I'm going to have to stop saying that it's all about that final second corner because bottom to top is working once in a while here.
Yeah, it has proven that. And if you're not on the move before that second to last corner, you're too late. Ben Miller took the win ahead of Zach Herod. Nick Hart, so good in the intermediate sprint, so good in the finish there. Came in third. Thomas Perrin for fourth. Ola Hem for fifth. Tom Better for sixth. Charlie Beek for seventh. Charlie Revel for eighth. Josh Gray for ninth. And Luca Zanaska rounding out that top 10.
And then it's going to be Khan Kayan for Vision coming on through at 4.8 watts per kilogram. Looks like it is the upgrade for Khan Kayan, most likely. It's solid result here. But that's what this is also about here amongst the Zwift Racing League, is also finding out where people are placing and working on way through based on results in the league. But solid ride there from the Vision rider. David Brady there in second, followed up by Clayton Payne, and Jordan McPhail there in fourth. It's going to be Daniel Stafford coming on through for fifth. Sean Burke for Z-Sun in sixth. Tom Light for seventh. Joe Codwalder in eighth. Dan Marston in ninth. And Morten Volgren coming on through for 10th.
All right, if we take a look over at the Division C, Basti Locken took the win there ahead of Rick Barbera, Scott Robertson in third, Will Fuller in fourth, Chisholm McDonald in fifth, Francisco Cabral in sixth, Uli Duca in seventh, Peter Cooper in eighth, David Hill in ninth, and Alex Molzer took 10th.
And in the D category, it is Brian Kerr that we just saw coming across the line. Solid break away from Barry McGugan. And then it's going to be Adam, and I'm going to try this one. How come I got this one again? I should have threw this one on over to you.
Every time.
Adam Antoscu. I think that's okay. Antoscu. There we go. Please help me out in chat if you with the correction. That'd be absolutely great there. Ben Lister there in fourth. Richard Wienman in fifth. Martin Sands there in sixth. It's going to be Susana Madeira in seventh. Ralph Dunker in eighth. And Barry Howison in ninth. Will Maskery coming on through for 10th. And then we did just watch these sprints coming on through at the top. West 2 Division 1A. Red Walters just barely getting it over the top of Brinkley.
Well, that has been across the board some pretty tough racing, hasn't it, Nathan? Because look at those time gaps, which show that that's actually a pretty hot finish, a pretty hot sprint atop Libby Hill when there's only 0.12 of a second, 0.22 back to Brandland there. So pretty tight racing. Red Walters. Is that a mermaid emoji? I'm not sure.
I think surfer. I think it's a surfer.
Yeah,
what's
taking the win. Brinkley in second. Brandland in third. Sherritt sitting there in fourth. Hugh English in fifth. Caleb Carl. We love that name. Will we see him racing again later tonight, Nathan? Perhaps Marcus Burnett in seventh, so. Most likely. Yeah, he'll go and have a plate of eggs and bacon, and he'll be back up again. Tom Fitzpatrick in eighth, Matt Richardson in ninth, and Alex Pritchard coming in 10th.
And in the B category for West 2 EMEA, it's Oliver Meek, followed up by Oscari Alto, Marcio Vieira in third. It's going to be Kaj Razmakers in fourth. It's going to be Sierran Cumins in fifth. And then Rodney Young in sixth, Paul Kearney in seventh, Ed Long in eighth, Ben Chapman in ninth, and Oliver Harkin primed coaching coming on through for 10th place. That is West 2 Division 1B.
Right, let's take a look at the C's, and that is Warren Honey, and I reckon that's either
Warren Honey Badger. That's Warren Honey Badger.
Is it? I was about to say, is that a badger? Is that a beaver? What is that animal? A wombat, maybe? Warren Honey Badger will go for that, taking the win ahead of Jamie Watson. Hatch Harvey in third, Mark Peasgood in fourth, Anthony Douglas in fifth, David Leslie coming through in sixth, David Bowen in seventh, Martin McAvoy in eighth, Andrew Burton in ninth, and Steve Stall rounding out that top 10.
And this is what we have for the D's at this point. Still some results coming on through, but we did see Williams from KVBB able to break away from Richard Viney in the final climb, and Rob James coming on through in the D category. Well, that's going to be our coverage for EMEA across the board. It's always our marathon coverage, that's for sure. Trying to cover
It
how,
is.
I mean, there's
Yeah, I need some more of this.
more coffee
Yeah.
time here coming on through. It's really great. We still have the Americas later today, Kate, and lots of racing still to come. I think after the first two races this morning, though, we saw a lot of different tactics from what I think were predicted, though. I think the prediction was very different from how it ended up playing out. Sometimes the prediction it matches a lot, but there were breakaways. There were, crazy sprints at the top of Libby Hill that we weren't expecting to work out, bottom to top. I mean, very, very different each and every time. Really, the races were making the race when it came to the final outcomes, though.
Yeah, a bit of a mix of everything, wasn't there? And certainly those intermediate sprints proved to be quite a leg stinger because a lot of the riders who were sprinting at their hardest during those, they were the ones that were hurting a little bit more up Libby Hill. But I think the teams, some of them played it perfectly from a strategy perspective. And also, I think the really good sneaky tactic we saw come out quite a number of times was going after that fastest through segment rather than the first over the line, because that big boost of points was certainly pushing a lot of people further up the point chart. So what we saw didn't quite marry up with the point system, and I think that's a little bit of subterfuge. So I loved how they did that. But Nathan, I feel like I'm in mourning. This is our last points race of season 2. How are we in this spot already? We've got a team's time trial next week. So that's always a very different dynamic, a beautiful event in and of itself. But what a way to finish the points racing for the season, to have this incredible finish up Libby Hill.
Yeah, Greater London Flat next week. I think a lot of the teams that have raced in APAC as well as just EMEA just now are going to start thinking about what is to come for next week and how they can best set up on Greater London Flat. That course is very difficult TTT. It's full gas the entire time. It's this type of course where it's just hold on. You don't get a lot of reprieve because there isn't a lot of sections where there's downhills to sit in on your group. So everybody's got to bring their A game. Everyone's going to be looking toward that TTT now to see where they end up in the final. And also the playoffs, that has been a focus here. So, Kate, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
America's still to come
has.
today.
Yeah, well, we'll see you a little bit later for that. And, of course, we'll have Dave Toll on board too, the big booming voice that he is. So he'll bring a little bit of spark. If our coffee can't, right, Nathan, we'll try the coffee as well. Thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. Of course, head over to WTRL.racing for all of those results. There are so many different leagues that are running, especially in this EMEA category. So make sure you go over, check that out. We'll see you next week for London. I think, pour yourself a nice drink, get comfortable. We'll round out the season in style. And until then, take care of yourself, and we'll see you then.